Doste, nada, nada. Well, let me tune this back. Hello, and welcome to the Freakacast.
Hello and welcome.
I'm Matthew Puetz.
I'm Andrew Felson.
And this is the Freakacast, obviously.
The Freakacast. Episode 5.
5!
We've made it to a
5 gold rings!
4 Mega Man, 2 Batman, because we did it twice. And a Freakacast about Freakazoid.
Yay!
I know I messed it up, but who cares?
That's okay. Anyway,
I don't know why we're singing Christmas song, because it's the new year.
True. But we had such a good Christmas that it's still there.
And I know one present I'm sure you got. And it's a subject for today, but we're going to get
Well, if I don't get it, I'll be very upset like I did last Christmas.
Yes, you will. But before that, as always, we must once again plug songs2wearpants2.com for the very nice song he made.
Yes.
And, of course, you can go there to get your own song made or buy one yourself. And he continually makes songs for himself as well. So there's plenty of music for you to download, both for paying and free.
Yes.
And Newgrounds.com, who I use quite a bit of Mega Man music from.
Hint, hint, wink, wink.
So you can go to the audio portal there and get music there for free, but make sure to cite the author, as I did.
And let's not forget our wonderful, well, I like them as friends. In fact, you can actually friend them on Facebook, batmanonfilm.com. Or like them on Facebook, I guess. To be checking for your... I check it daily, but some people are not as obsessed as I am.
For all your Batman...
For all your Batman on Film news. And they not only do Batman on Film, but they did also do... Occasionally they'll do movie reviews of non-Batman movies, however they are related in some way. For instance, they just did a review of The Fighter starring co-starring Christian Bale. And it's got rave reviews so far, so that's a movie probably worth checking out if you haven't already.
Right. And, of course, our site.
Yes. Don't forget our site, because if you do, well, you're kind of missing the point here.
So, the home site, the blog, afelson1.wordpress.com. That is afelson, F-E-L-S-O-N, 1.wordpress.com. And you can find us on iTunes by searching for The Freakacast or Andrew's Brain. One of the two will get you there.
Yes.
Anyway, one of the presents that I'm sure you got is the subject for today, and... you have so much to talk about because this is really all you.
Yes, well, I hope you'll chime in too.
Well, of course, I do have my things to say on this subject. Last episode was kind of more about me since you knew nothing about it.
Yeah.
But this one's pretty much about you. So I'm going to, without further ado, you have the floor.
Today, we are talking about one of, well, let's face it, it's the best product ever made, Lego.
As mentioned in the theme song, this is an obsession of his.
Yes. And I'll be talking about my different experiences as we go forth, but I do want to start off by, I do want to hit a couple things that most people are probably unaware of. They see them in the stores and like, oh, it's toys. Well, yes and no. Obviously, the certain target age group is 6 to 12. However, let's face it, it doesn't stop there.
No.
Especially if you enjoy building them as much as I do.
Okay. Oh, yes.
But there is a reason for this, okay? And that's one of the things I want to talk about is if we look back at the basic history, okay, it was started in Denmark in the 40s. And it actually started off as a company making wooden toys.
Kind of like Lincoln Logs?
No. Like basic little wooden ducks on wheels.
Oh, like actual wooden toys.
Yes, actual wooden toys.
Like Santa's Workshop kind of thing.
Yes, very much like Santa's Workshop. And the interesting thing is that they were looking for a new way to incorporate play and learning. If we look at, for instance, I do want to cover where the name Lego comes from. It comes from a contraction of two Danish words, leg, got, meaning play well. Okay? Ironically, in Latin, it also means I assemble.
You know what those letters stand for?
What?
Lethally edged, gouging object.
Yes, which if you're not careful, that can happen as well.
By the way, we're here to entertain and inform.
Yes.
Hence the history lesson.
Yes. Now, the interesting thing about the company is that its motto is only the best is good enough. And I want you to keep that in mind. Some of the things I'll hit, some of the high points as we go forth, we'll go back to that, okay? Found this and I thought this is rather interesting. Their mission statement is to inspire and develop the builders of tomorrow, which has nothing to do with kids playing with toys.
No.
And that's part of the reason why they were making wooden toys, but thought, we really want to incorporate play into learning. It's not enough for kids to just play with toys. They need to get something out of it that's going to take them forth in their life, as it has me, as it has many other people. I know of architects who, would use Legos to build their final exam for their architecture class in college. There are massive amounts of things built, and it really is something that is a phenomenon of itself. You can certainly find, here's another website I should plug, brickshelf.com. It's essentially an art gallery. Anybody can upload photos, and a lot of times, primarily things that people build, but also you'll find pictures of, say, new sets coming up the next year, or all kinds of things. But it is primarily an art gallery, and you'll find things that you look at and you're like, holy cow, I can't believe they built that. For instance, one of the things that initially got me interested in the site was somebody built a robot turkey, basically an assault turkey, out of Legos.
Nice.
And like the wings would open up, and there's just, this thing was fully armed. Had like missiles and guns everywhere. It was insane.
Is this sponsored by Lego's official site?
No, this is actually a fan site.
So it's a fan site. So Lego actually has its own website.
Yes, lego.com. And really, the only reason people my age go to lego.com, I shouldn't say the only reason. They do actually have some games on there. I think the one that I actually got hooked on really well was it was called, what was it, Mars Mission. Mm-hmm. And that was one of their lineups a few years back. And they had it set up very similar to, if you've ever played the game Command and Conquer, very similar to that, where you have your main base, and you'd have to build up some men and build vehicles and collect resources and go take out your enemies. And it was completely online, and it was inspired. And it's actually ironic because at the time I got interested in the game, I'm like, holy crap, now I really want the sets. And of course, it was the tail end of when the sets were going out, so I was like, crap, I couldn't find them. So I was very upset about that.
Do you mind if I ask a question?
Sure.
Do you think, what was, first, okay, two-part question.
Okay.
What was the name of the company before they switched to building blocks?
It was still Lego.
It was always Lego?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think that they got the inspiration to make what we know today, the piece-together blocks and stuff, from observing children playing with wooden blocks? Because wooden blocks have been around forever, and that was always a sort of
yes and no
building thing that people have done.
There was obviously the basic idea of putting blocks together was not something new.
Right.
However, they wanted, like I said, they wanted to take that to the next level. Mm-hmm. Okay? So one of the things they did was, back in 1949, they actually went from making wooden toys to plastic bricks. They said, okay, we want to take this to the next level. Plastic is the way to go. Think about it. It's 49. It's after World War II. It's a material that's starting to become more available, and they were like, let's try to work with this, see what we can come up with, because this is the future. And they actually...
How right they were.
How right they were. However, very similar to a lot of things that when somebody has a vision, like, this is going to be the future, and other people are like, no. In fact, it was actually a mindset at the time that plastic toys were inferior to wooden ones. How wrong they were.
Well, maybe at the time when they were making those first plastic toys, they might have been inferior.
And that's partially what kind of was happening, was that most Lego bricks today have a special design where you have tubes underneath the piece. Mm-hmm. Okay? That allows you to, say, hook one of those, like the edge of that piece, onto another stud on the top of another piece.
Yeah.
The original Lego bricks did not have that design. They were just completely hollow on the bottom, which unfortunately took it back to what they were trying to get away from, was just stacking blocks, because that's all you could do, was just stack the blocks. You couldn't really do anything else with them. So the guy who created it, his name is Ole Kirk Christensen. His son in the 54.
Ole Kirk Christensen?
Yes, that was his name, Ole Kirk Christensen.
Okay. Just want to make sure I heard that correctly.
Yes. His son Godfrey said, you know what? We need to we're still not quite there yet. We need to take this to the next level. What can we do? And so they worked for about 5 years, finally got this idea of putting tubes underneath the brick so that you could put an edge of a brick on top of another brick.
And you can interlock them.
Yes. And that was the key, the fact that you could interlock them. Okay? So now you have this ability. The only problem was they didn't have the right plastic. The plastic they were using was it wasn't durable enough, and it didn't have the quality. Going back to, only the best is good enough. Mm-hmm. Okay? An interesting thing about the plastic they finally just developed, and I guess it was kind of discovered more than anything, was called ABS plastic. And there's a reason I mention that is because there's a few things that ABS plastic is used for. For instance, musical instruments, golf club heads, automotive trim components, protective headgear, airsoft guns. That's one of the things they're made of. Notice, there's no other toys made with ABS plastic.
Right.
This is pretty much like military grade plastic.
Well, yeah, I mean, if they're making helmets with it,
yeah,
obviously it's a high quality plastic.
It is. Going back to only the best is good enough. So it's one of those things where I remember when my brother first got his airsoft gun, he said it was ABS plastic. I'm like, I've heard that before. Oh yeah, Legos are made out of that. You don't have, I mean, I don't know of any other product that's considered a toy by most mainstream people that's made out of military-grade materials. So they really do believe, I mean, the company has made a huge campaign against, it's not just what the people can do with it, it's the fact that they're durable. Like, I have the same blocks and bricks and pieces that I had when I was 8. 20 years ago, they're still just as good as they were when I first opened them.
Yeah.
And that's...
Unless you do something really bad to them, they usually hold up.
Yeah, like unless you actually sit there and accidentally step on one, and even then, as long as it's on a carpet, it's going to hold up.
I once ran over someone with a lawnmower.
Mm-hmm.
They held their shape, but there was a lot of new holes in them.
Yeah, that's the thing. It was like, they don't die. At least not very easily.
I don't think I could use it as well, but it was
probably
a
not.
neat-looking piece.
I know. I have a couple of heads from the guys that my two cousins, when they were like 3 and 4, they would have this nasty... This was my biggest problem is when they come to visit, oh, go play with Matt's Legos. Oh, that's great. And then they sit there and chew on them, and now I have pieces I can't use because they've mangled them up so much.
We're going to get to it, but you also have some you manually destroyed.
Yes, we will talk about it. Let's save that one. We need a build-up here for that one.
I know. There's things yet to come.
Yes, plenty to come. So, they this was in 1963. They finally had the right mix of the right material and the right design. And other than shape design from some newer components and different colors, the same basic design of Legos today in 2011 is the same design they had in the 60s. They haven't really, like I said, they've made modifications as far as the shapes of certain pieces to account for new model designs.
Right.
But it's the same basic thing because, like I said, they found their thing and they went with it.
Well, it's like, don't fix what isn't broken.
Right. Well, at the same time, improve what you can, but don't, like you said, don't break what isn't... Hold on. Don't fix what isn't broken. Sorry, I'm a little excited here. All right.
We can tell. He's talking about a thing that's been...
Since my childhood. Since I was 3.
I was about to ask, when did you get your first Lego?
My first Lego set was the Duplo train. And it was probably one of the best Christmases ever. Because... Not because it turned me on to Legos, but because I remember this was back, we were living in a subdivision at the time. This was before we moved into our old house.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some other guy other than my dad. I don't remember if it was maybe my aunt's boyfriend at the time or something. But I remember he was making a big deal of it. He's like, Santa came. I'm like, really? What did he bring? Because I'm 3.
Yeah.
And so I went downstairs, and they had the whole thing set up. There was a styrofoam tunnel, like something you'd use for a model train that they had gotten for it. In fact, I think we got rid of it right before we moved.
Aww.
A few years ago. And it's just one of those things, like, I didn't need it. Plus it was old. I mean, this thing was, like, beat up and
styrofoam
dusty and stuff, so...
Not going to hold up as good as the Lego plastic.
No. But it was just really... And, granted, it was a push train, but still, it was Legos, it was a train, which I still love today.
Probably around the Christmas tree.
No, it wasn't around the Christmas tree, but it was set up with the track and everything.
Okay.
So it definitely got me interested in my mom, growing up. She's like, once you turn 18, I'm going to stop buying you Legos. And I'm pretty sure she's realizing now, it's like, yeah, this ain't going to quit.
He's never going to grow out of this.
No, and, and that's an interesting thing because the product is not designed for you to grow out of. In fact, when they were looking at how to incorporate learning and play with blocks. They said, okay, there's a few rules we want to have. It needs to be non-gender specific, which is why for many years, up until recently, and I'll talk about this in a second, every Lego person had a yellow head. It's because they did not want to distinguish between race or gender. They wanted that to be left up to the person's imagination. That's also why they had the basic 2 eyes and a smile, as opposed to detailed faces, because they said, let the kid decide what it is. Okay? But also part of the reason why they used primary colors, reds, yellows, blues, blacks, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Okay? So they wanted to, and it makes sense. If you think about it, if you're trying to make a product that's designed for all ages, you do have to kind of have some parameters for it. And they went in saying, we don't want this to be a toy. We want this to be a product that, and this is a great line from their vision, it's not just about products, it's about realizing the human possibility. Like I said.
With the idea of, if you can build it in Lego form,
yes,
it's possible to do it in real life.
Exactly. And then it certainly encourages a lot of people. And at the same time, I've actually used Legos to make a small-scale prototype, for instance, for the Buzz Lightyear wing system that I'm designing for a costume, hopefully one day.
Good luck with that.
Well, it's further along than I anticipated, but at the same time, still, I don't have a full-scale version yet.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get to the full-scale version hopefully soon. At least in the prototype form, not the actual.
Yeah.
Because for that, I will want to use plastic, and I'm not quite there yet. 1966 was the first Lego train.
Okay.
This is fairly a new idea because up until then, they pretty much just had a bucket of blocks. There was no model necessarily to it. It's not like, nowadays when you buy Lego sets, they have the Star Wars ships, and they have the city buildings and vehicles and stuff. Up until then, it was just, here's a bucket of blocks.
Don't they still sell just a bucket of blocks?
Well, yeah. But I'm just saying, up until 1966,
I get you.
had a bucket of blocks.
I get you.
Okay. Now, and it was battery operated, so they were starting to get into using motors and stuff like that. So it wasn't just blocks. You can incorporate some movement to it, which was good. That's another thing I do want to talk about. One thing I've noticed is that Lego is really good as far as even as a toy product, because if you look at even say what most other companies would try to do to make action, for instance, if you think action figures, well, let's face it, it's violence. When you get into guys punching, especially for the guy toys, it's mostly violence. It's some sort of gun shooting or punching or kicking, something like that.
Not always. I mean, sometimes you can have like a throwing and have basketball action figures, things of that nature. So it's not always violence.
But that doesn't sell as well as, say, Star Wars action figures.
It doesn't sell as much as,
But one thing Lego's always done well, and one thing I pride them on, is their version of action is movement. They can have a set where it just has a bunch of, secret doors that open and that sort of thing, and that's still just as fascinating, and probably, for me, if not more fascinating, than a figure that can kick its leg out or something, karate chop action, something like that.
Well, I would guess probably the appeal is the fact that you're making a miniature world.
Right.
And so, having like a secret compartment in a castle is a neat idea. It's like, oh, I've always wanted to see that, like a bookshelf spinning.
Right.
Kind of thing. So, I mean, that's kind of why I'm interesting and stimulating.
Plus, one thing I've also gotten myself is, up until recently, anytime I would build a model, it would be fairly stationary. There wasn't a whole lot of movement. Now I've gotten into building more action features into it so that it is more detailed, and at the same time, it gives me more of a challenge.
Right.
Which is always kind of nice.
So the train was the first one to have like, here's what you can build with this.
Right.
Kind of thing. And
they did have...
Did they have wheels before that, like so you can make a car, or was that the first thing with wheels?
That was the first thing with wheels. Interestingly enough, and I'm backtracking a little bit here, they did have like town-like sets, but it wasn't even like it was when I was growing up. It wasn't like you built the building and you could put a guy inside. It was miniature. In fact, the first Lego cars were more like Matchbox cars. Like it was one piece.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't even, you didn't even build a little car. So when they did come out with the train, you had wheels that were being used, you had a motor that was being used, so it was much more involved in it.
Okay.
Which was kind of nice. Jumping up to the 70s, in 77, they debuted what's called the Lego Technique series, or Lego Technic. I'm probably saying it incorrectly the first time. And this is not blocks. This is more like beams and connectors. I'm sure you've seen, they incorporate a lot of the Technic pieces today. It's just so fluid because they've incorporated so many different building styles that the average person wouldn't even recognize it as a Technic piece unless they had either grown up with it or were old enough to remember when Technic was its own thing.
Okay.
But it's generally like a long beam piece with holes in the side, and you can use connectors to interlock two beams, and they can pivot on each other.
Okay, yeah.
So you have that. So right away, you're taking what was just a basic block and transforming it entirely, allowing for a whole new way to build things and make all kinds of interesting things. And that was usually reserved for the older audience. You know, I think they usually started off at like 7 or 8, just because your average 5-year-old wasn't quite ready to take on this new technique of building. So they had that going for them, and they were branching out and that sort of thing. And like I said, today they use all these different building techniques and everything in their sets that they can get more out of their sets today, which is great.
Yeah, they can add more detail and add more features to it.
For instance, one thing that I thought, I personally think, other than the fact that the first Lego town cars were like Matchbox cars, the funniest thing to me was that in 78 they debuted their Castle series. They said, okay, we've had success with the train. Okay, we want to start branching out and making more models.
Let's go for castles.
Let's go for castle. Guess what color the first Lego castle was?
Hot pink.
No. It was yellow.
Yellow. Probably the ugliest color, other than hot pink.
Probably.
For a castle.
Yeah.
Or I'm sure people will be like, I've never seen a yellow castle, and I never wanted to.
Probably. You know, it's like, it does kind of make me wonder. It's like, what made them think that a yellow castle would be attractive? And when I was doing some research to prepare for this, the only thing I could figure was like, okay, well, it's one of the parameters Lego set out was we want everything to be non-gender specific. So they were probably thinking, well, if we make it yellow, it'll appeal to both girls and boys. Apparently they realized, you know, this isn't telling quite as much as we would like, and people really want gray castles, because you know what? Rocks are gray.
Yeah.
And this is what they built castles with. So they finally did break down and make gray castles, and now they have castles that have even much more detail, which is great, because if you're really into building castles, whether you're boy or girl, you want it to look realistic. You don't necessarily, or as realistic as you can, given what you have to work with.
Yeah.
You don't really care, you know, not that many girls that are going to build castles necessarily want a pink castle anymore.
It's true. They can just go to Barbie for that.
Right. The other thing about the first castle lineup was, you know how like today, when you get a little castle set, it's got a horse in it, the horse is one piece? Mm-hmm. Originally it wasn't one piece. In fact, it didn't even have specific pieces. You had to build the horse out of blocks.
So you can make like nightmare horses.
Kinda.
Because they're very blocky.
Yeah. They were... That was not Lego's prime, let's just put it that way. But they were branching out, they were trying new things, and hey, it was successful in the end.
It's a learning curve. There's always stumbles along the way before they hit that stride.
Exactly. Now, the other thing in 78 that happened was, you know, there was kind of this movie, you may have heard about it, came out in 77. It's about space and some guys with these laser swords.
Yeah, I might have heard about this.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, that movie was apparently a big hit. Go figure. And as a result of that, a lot of companies, especially toy companies, started promoting space. And so one of the other things, in addition to Castle, Lego also had space sets come out. And they didn't take a realistic approach. They kind of made up their own things, like little moon rovers and like all kinds of, you know, little spaceships for people, for little guys. Other thing I forgot to mention is that the minifigure, the classic minifigure, came out in 1974.
Oh, it took that long to make a minifigure?
Yes, it took that long. Because apparently, you know, up until then, most customers, I guess, were just content with building little buildings of their own. And I guess they finally said, you know, I'd like some people to inhabit my buildings.
Yes.
So they finally came out with it. And, interesting of note about the minifigure, approximately, numbers might be a bit fuzzy, but we're going here with at least over, we're at least 30 years, there have been 4 billion minifigures produced.
That's a lot of...
Making it the world's biggest population group. So there are more Lego men in existence than human beings.
Take that, China!
Yeah, take that.
That's a lot of Lego people.
Yeah, you thought I had a lot.
Oh, you do.
Well, yeah, but I don't have quite that many.
Apparently your closet is their vacation home.
I can think of a better place to vacation than my closet. Even for a Lego minifigure.
I suppose.
Because it's kind of cramped in there. They're all shoved in boxes. I mean, if my people could talk, they'd be like, will you let us out? We're really tired of being cramped in here like sardines.
That'd probably be everyone's toys saying that.
Probably, but mine especially.
Now, when they made the figurines, were they as they are today, where you can detach the heads and the
yes,
the feet and all that?
I believe so. I believe they are. I believe the design is pretty much the same.
So other than the color, not much has changed.
Right.
Okay.
And there were some interesting things about the design of the minifigure as far as color and that sort of thing. Like I said before, the basic yellow head with a basic 2 eyes and a mouth. So they kept it real simple. Basic colors again. If they did any printing on the front of the torso, is very minimal.
Yeah.
That has since then very much been changed to now they have very detailed faces, not only on one side, but sometimes 2 sides.
Yeah.
To account for different facial expressions.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also my personal favorite of all faces you could imprint upon a minifigure.
Oh?
Two-Face.
Oh, yeah.
Probably because I remember when I was a kid, probably 10. I was probably 10 or 11. Mm-hmm. I would actually, because I wanted Batman Legos very much when I was in middle school.
Oh, so badly.
So badly. That I would draw out little strips and draw on the face that I wanted, cut it out, color it first, cut it out, and tape it onto the head that I already had. That way I was kind of making my own guys, because I couldn't paint directly on the face, otherwise I would have done that.
And then you took a tool.
Yes, and then I took my mom's soldering iron and warped one of the hair pieces to look like a Two-Face hair, which I'll admit Legos does look better. When you actually have the resources to make an official Two-Face, yeah, it's going to look better.
I'm sure melted plastic wasn't what you were going for.
It had enough of an effect you could tell it was Two-Face.
Yes.
But, it's that old dodge. It worked, but it wasn't great. But it sufficed long enough. Then, in 1989, they brought out your favorite, Pirates!
Yarr! Yarr!
Which I actually have all 4 of the original sets.
Nice.
However, due to the move up to my parents' current house, I lost one of the base plates to the Pirates Forbidden Island.
Yarr.
So maybe I can find it on eBay one day and complete my set, and then I could have them all built. That'd be nice.
Yo-ho.
Yes. It was pretty cool because it had a mask piece in the middle, and it had like a bridge, and it had like it actually had some capsule pieces used, which was kind of nice. Like they had like the angled pieces for like the corners.
Yeah.
So you could use those and build like kind of a rock-like formation. It had a little jail on the bottom where you could put a soldier, and it had some steps, like a one-piece step thing. That was pretty cool.
And these had the firing cannons,
yes,
right?
They were the original pirate sets had the firing cannons, which was great. Except the next year, I guess I didn't keep up with Lego then as much as I do now. For one thing, there wasn't the internet to use to know when the sets were coming out and that sort of thing. So the other thing about Lego at that time, and they pretty much stopped doing this, I guess, for about 10 years now, which really sucks, is that in every Lego set, generally speaking, $20 and under, they'd give you a little pamphlet that had like some of the sets, but $20 and up, you'd get a little booklet that had every Lego set they currently were making.
Right.
And I love those things because I would sneak them to school. In fact, I can remember, even my senior year, I'd bring one to class. Me and BJ would look at it during class during physics, which is probably why we didn't do as well in there as we should have, but
I don't know if that's a sad thing that even up through high school, you're just like, ooh, these are things I wish I had. looking at Lego sets.
I still do that now. It's just online.
I know. It's just, I don't know. It's, I don't know. I mean, to each his own. This is your passion.
And at that age, it was, I mean, even now, it's like, it gives you a nice, I can look at it differently now. Like, I look and say, okay, what am I interested in? It's like, one of the things that always kept me grounded in Lego was the fact of building. Mm-hmm. Okay? I know some people, yourself included, you can't build it outside of the instructions.
Well, yes and no.
Okay. Well, I mean, because my brother's very similar, you know. He can build, he'll build the set, and then, like, yeah, I can't really build anything else out of it. Some people, but they still love Legos. Mm-hmm. So, and that's the great thing about it is it's got that dual play. The models allow you to have that dual play feature. You can build a set and then, you know, play with it if you want. Or people like me, we get more enjoyment out of the building aspect of it.
Right.
So the great thing about it is it got something for everybody.
Right. I mean, for you, it's like when you buy a set or you get a set as a gift, you build it as instructed, but then you're like, I can improve upon this, and you'll redo it, or you just take it apart altogether and use the pieces to build something entirely different.
Or you'll like this one. There was a police station that came out a few years ago.
Yeah. And
I was able to get it on sale, probably for, I think, about $30 off.
Yeah.
After Christmas. I didn't even build the set. It just went straight to parts. That set has never seen its original construction. It's interesting because I was looking through the instructions. I'm like, holy crap. They actually had toilets in the little jail cells. I'm like, okay, I've got to build those.
I'm surprised.
So that shows you how much detail they're putting into these things.
I'm just find it funny that you were so amused and compelled to see a Lego toilet that you got excited about.
Well, yeah, because I had never seen that before.
Well, I suppose when you gotta go, even when you're a Lego.
Yeah, well, at least they gave them separate ones, like one for each person. It wasn't like a real prison where it's like, oh, yeah, everybody in here, but you only get one.
Yeah.
So it took me aback. I'm like, is that? Holy crap, it's a Lego toilet. Anyway, where are we? Okay, we're kind of we're in Pirates. Okay, so in 89, they, for whatever reason, the next go-around, when they were coming out with new pirate sets, they got rid of a pullback shooting cannon, and instead went for a flick-fire cannon.
Yeah.
Well, then apparently the next go-around after that, they just got rid of firing cannons altogether. And I kept wanting to get the pirate system, like, what? The first time I got a non-firing cannon, it was just basically the cannon shape. Like you could put the little pieces for the ammo in it.
Yeah.
But there was nothing in there. There was no mechanism. I'm like, what's going on here? Am I missing a piece? And then when it finally occurred to me, oh, this is how it's designed? That's crap. I didn't buy any pirate sets after that. The nice thing is, when they came back out with pirates,
they have the firing.
No. Not only did they bring back the firing mechanism, they realized people wanted the firing cannon so badly, they made a nice little $6 set that had two guys, a little rock piece, and a firing cannon. So it was very easy to get a bunch of those very cheaply. Because they were like, this is what people are primarily going to want. Let's give them a nice cheap set that they can get as many as they want with. Mm-hmm. And Lego, growing up, Lego had a lot of good sets. That there were plenty of... They did have some... Pirates kind of started to trail off, both in what they were designing, plus they didn't have the firing cannons. Castle sets had their ups and downs. They had, I think it was 95, they had a lineup called Royal Knights.
Yeah.
Called Royal Knights, and they were really cool. In fact, they had a really cool base plate that was used for one of the castles, and it had just some interesting features, like, I'm trying to think, like it had a dungeon underneath, and they started to bring out skeletons, like in the dungeon, like pop-out skeletons and that sort of thing. And they had like some new column pieces that were really neat, and there was a lot more detail to it. And that's one thing that they started to start doing was both in all their sets they were starting to show off more detail. Except,
which is always good in a building thing when you're trying to recreate stuff.
And then, unfortunately, in like early 2000s, I don't know if it was because of what the competition was doing or what was going on inside their heads, but they decided, you know what? We're going to build our sets with less pieces and bigger pieces.
So going for less is more.
Yeah, I guess they were thinking, I guess the mindset was, kids don't want to sit there building all day. They want to build a thing and play with it.
Mm-hmm.
Except they were wrong. The company lost $2 million between 2002 and 2004 as a result of this design decision.
2 million or 2 billion?
2 million.
2 million. All things considered, not bad, but I'm sure...
Not bad, but considering that...
But 2 million is something for people to be like, something's not right.
And when it's a significant drop in your revenue, especially when you've been going strong up until this point...
Yeah.
You definitely want to... Just to throw some numbers out here. In 2005, they had a $214 million net profit, okay, to in 2006 to a $1.3 billion net profit. There's a reason for this, because in 04/05, they finally realized, as a result of this $2 million loss, they realized, this isn't right. We need to go back and reevaluate our product. And they basically realized, oh, people really like getting a lot of parts and building things. They like more detail. So then all of a sudden, I guess it was because it was just the right time, but all of a sudden things in 2000, the products and the sets they built in 2006 had so much more detail from the ones from the 90s. It was amazing. It's astounding. And they've kept that level of detail, and that having a lot of parts and a lot of detail in sets has stayed with them since. They're on the rise, and they are they are at their top game right now. It's the best time to be a LEGO fan because you're getting sets and you're getting designs and new ways of building. That's the other thing. That's one of the reasons I still buy LEGO sets. This is just piles of bricks. Is because with each set that they come out with, you get new design techniques. And as a person who enjoys the building aspect, I can sit there and come up with ideas all day, but sometimes just seeing this one little thing done a certain way will trigger a whole new idea for me and a whole new way of building things.
Where you're like, oh, I haven't thought of that before.
Yeah. For instance, Arkham Asylum was a model that I've been trying to design pretty much ever since I was 13.
Okay.
And I went through various designs. I was always wanting to use the base plate from that Royal Knights castle. Because I love the design. I thought, well, this would be really cool. It's big. It's it puts it up a hill, and Arkham should always be on a hill because that's the way it was in the animated series. But I was having a lot of trouble with the overall design. I couldn't pin it down, and I couldn't get in a way that I was really happy with. It wasn't until, and I'm jumping the gun here a little bit, but whatever. One of the things LEGO finally also did was that in 1999.
Going back to the 90s?
Going back to the 90s, just for a moment. Remember that space movie with the laser swords?
Yeah.
Well, apparently it took off really well, and they decided to go back and make more of them. So they had a new one come out in 99, and guess what? LEGO said, you know what? We like Star Wars. We want to put Legos with it. So they brought the license in. Star Wars Legos have been a hit ever since.
Oh, yes.
And they're continuing to grow and continuing to be not just profitable, but a huge enjoyment among fans, LEGO, and the Star Wars fans alike. And as a result of the success of the Star Wars Legos, they also brought in Harry Potter Legos because that was on the rise, certainly of the movies and the book franchise. And it wasn't until LEGO came out with their set of Hogwarts Castle, I saw that, and that triggered me, oh, that's perfect for Arkham. And for some reason, I saw that set designed a certain way. It gave me exactly what I needed to design Arkham. And it worked beautifully.
So Star Wars was the very first licensed?
Yes, Star Wars was the very first license of anything that LEGO had ever done. Up until then, it was just straight their own creations. And they had a number of different... In the 90s, they had a number of different themes. For instance, they had a Wild West theme with like cavalry versus the American Indians. They had, as an offshoot of pirates, they had Islanders.
I don't remember that one.
Yeah, it was pretty short-lived. I'm trying to think, what else did they have? The space area had so many different themes. They had Blacktron and M-Tron that was stored for like magnet. And they started incorporating magnets into the different vehicles, like where you could hook two things up with a magnet together.
Yeah, I had magnets for some of the underwater, like submarine shark sets.
They also came out with the Aquanauts.
I think that's what I had.
Which were kind of cool. They had deep sea divers, which is... The thing is, they did the deep sea divers after Aquanauts, so it's kind of like It's the best way to describe it.
Kind of a weak follow-up.
Yeah,
It paled in comparison.
it's kind of the Batman and Robin to Batman Forever.
Okay.
We're like, oh, yeah, I was expecting Aquanauts, not this. I don't want something that realistic. I want to have some fantasy elements in my underwater adventures here.
Yeah.
Of course, they always had the town/city lineup going, and that changed design. Obviously, like I said before, in the 2002 to 2004, they had that design mindset of larger parts, less parts. Kids just want to build them and move on.
Mm-hmm.
So those sets definitely suffered as a result of that. The castle lineup, they had one of the coolest things they ever did. I was so thrilled when I saw the first picture of this. It was called Fright Nights, and they had a bat on the shield.
I can see why you were so happy.
Yes.
If I remember correctly, one of them had like bat wings on a helmet.
Yes, the Bat Lord had a basic helmet, and it looked very similar to Batman's mask in the sense of it just had the two openings for the eyes and like a point for the nose, except it covered his whole face. It didn't get covered just at the nose.
Right.
But it had the bat wings coming out on each side, which was pretty cool. And they also had, that was the first set, yeah, it was the first castle set to have a witch with it.
Oh, okay,
so
cool.
they were starting to use witches. They had used a wizard before, like in the Royal Knights and other stuff, but they were starting to use the witches at that point, which was kind of cool.
And probably by this time, I know when I was growing up, because you can assign whoever it is to be male and female, but they had like hair pieces, so you could, and some were clearly like female hair pieces, so you could.
They didn't have that
girl.
They had a fairly standard one that was just like a little bit longer hair. It was straight down. It was just longer hair.
The one I had kind of looked like ponytails.
Okay,
on the
yeah,
side.
yeah, that's right. And they also had that one.
That's the one I had.
So, but I mean, that was pretty much it. And nowadays, holy crap, you've got, as a result, and it's actually a result of their licensed themes.
Well, you got princesses.
You got princesses, which are, I mean, you look at the way, for instance, the Princess in the Castle set from a couple years ago when they started, it just was like straight Lego castle. That was awesome castle lineup, where you had humans and orcs and undead.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, oh, that's awesome.
That's cool stuff.
And the great part about that was they really, I think, from a product standpoint, the way that they not just design the sets in terms of the models, but what, the size of a set that they would sell and what it came with worked really well for you to build up an army. And one of the things, this is just a theory of mine, but it's really funny because when they first came up with the Star Wars sets, me and about, I don't know, probably 50 million other people around the world really just wanted a big army of stormtroopers. A big army of Lego stormtroopers. And you know what? Lego was not very nice to us because they did not give us little battle packs. We just wanted a $10 set with like 4 or 5 guys in it. They didn't do that till like 2005. So we had to wait about 6 years for this. The only set that they did up, well, I shouldn't say that, not the only set, but one of the 2 sets they did up until 2005 that actually had a Stormtrooper. You had the TIE Fighter set, but that was the $20 set, and it only came with 1 Stormtrooper. So $1 for your guy, it's not as cost effective as you would like it to be.
Right.
And then they also had a set, I want to say it was probably about a $15 or $20 set that had like it had like 2 Ewoks and like a catapult and 2 speeder bikes and 1 Stormtrooper. Still, they're only giving you 1 Stormtrooper. It wasn't until 2005 with the release of Episode 3 that they actually came out with clone battle packs and droid battle packs. They gave you, it was like 4 clones and a speeder bike. And then the droid one had like 4 regular battle droids, 3 super battle droids, and a little carrier with like gun turrets in the front. So they finally realized, oh, people want big armies. And then, of course, that took off, and pretty much every couple years, they'll just come up with a new type of battle pack. Like, they're getting ready to come out. This is pretty cool. They're getting ready to come out with not just a new clone battle pack.
Yeah.
But they're also getting ready to come out with Mandalorian battle packs.
Oh, cool.
Which is pretty nice. So, yes, if you want an army of Boba Fett's, yeah. Go to your local Walmart. They have them.
Do you think part of this, I mean, it's not going to be all of it, but do you think part of it is because some people use the Lego guys for stop-motion animation?
Oh, yes. Well, That's certainly a possibility. That is actually, certainly in recent years, been a considerable drive for most people. But I think, honestly, the types of people that are going to make the stop-motion films probably are people our age that have already had a fairly substantial collection of Legos. Now, if you're talking about in terms of movie accurate shots and that sort of thing, yeah. But I think it's really just because people just want to show off big armies. I mean, I've seen pictures of people recreating the Battle of Geonosis with the big rolly hailfire droids and gunships. I mean, they would go out and buy, like, not just, I mean, now granted, when the gunship first came out in '02,
yeah,
with Episode 2's release, it was a $90 set. They'd go out and buy 2 and 3 at a time. Just so that, you know, in the six-legged AT-AT Ewalkers, they'd go out, like I said, 2 and 3 at a time, just so they could, they'd have the stalactite, or stalagmites, whatever they're called, from Geonosis to recreate the landscape. And, I mean, there's just, I mean, and you're talking 6 foot by 6 foot table here.
Yeah.
They just, I mean, so no. I honestly think it's people that have the money, and they just, it's very akin to people that do model trains.
I suppose. I mean, it might also, not so much a big thing, but maybe it's, hey, I want my friends to be able to play with me. There's no point in making a little city or a little play set with all these Legos and only have one guy, so none of my friends can play along.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're going to make a play set, you want to have your friends to play, too.
Yeah.
So it makes more sense to have.
Well, and here's the weird part is because up until, probably I want to say up until late 90s, I want to say maybe 97, 98, Lego actually did a very similar thing, and this was probably why it was so surprising. They did a little, and it was actually cheaper than, it was like a $6 set.
Yeah.
$6 or $7 set, and it would come with 5 guys. In fact, I remember I bought one year for my brother. It was Castle Guys, because he always liked to play with the men, so I said, okay, I'll just buy him a set of men. It was 5 guys and a horse for like $7. And so, and they had done this for so long, they were like, when Star Wars came out, we were thinking, okay, they're going to do that. And then they didn't. We're like, why? This makes too much sense. And then they finally did it. Of course, it makes so much sense that people will constantly buy them.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, when I go to the Lego store, they just have a giant bin that's nothing but battle packs.
I know you bought like Green Army Men that way.
Oh yeah, those are great
from Toy Story.
Yeah, that was their most recent license. They've actually had quite a few. They've had Star Wars, Harry Potter, obviously Spider-Man and Batman.
Yep.
Toy Story. They just also did Prince of Persia. That one was actually done well. I liked how
Indiana Jones.
Yeah, Indiana Jones. That one didn't take off as well as Star Wars, which was kind of a shame because they had some good designs.
Yeah, I mean it's.
But I think it's because one of the reasons that Star Wars has done so well is because it's primarily vehicles.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is with Star Wars, they've done redesigns. Like for instance, they had the they had the X-Wing come out on their first lineup in '99, but they also did a redesign in I think either '04 or '05, which it was a little bit bulkier, was a little bit more detailed, more accurate to what you saw on screen.
And plus, they're always constantly redoing the Millennium Falcon, from what I'm seeing.
Oh yeah, which is always good. I'm kind of glad I didn't get the first one because it didn't look that great. But I was able to get the second one, and I was like, this looks pretty good. In fact, I actually decided to take that and try to make it bigger. Use the same design, but just make it bigger. Mm-hmm. It's proving to be a bigger challenge, and also I have to convince myself to work on it because it's still not done. But one thing of note, actually, that they started with the Star Wars lineup that had never been done before was they started making models for people way older than their usual target audience. Okay, generally speaking, you go to your local Walmart or Toys R Us, whatever. You pick up a random set of Legos. It will usually say ages 6 to 12, 7 to 12.
Yeah.
However, believe it was the same year, 99. It was either 99 or 2000. They came out with what was called their Ultimate Collector Series.
Yeah.
I have the first two, which was the TIE Interceptor and the X-Wing. And these were giant models. It was $100. They were marketed for ages 16 and up.
Because they were so big and massive and complex?
Yes. So clearly, this was not for kids.
Right.
It was still Legos, but it was not for kids. And to this day, I think the best one they've done is the Star Destroyer. Mm-hmm. Because who doesn't want yard-long Star Destroyer sitting in their home, gracing their presence.
It is pretty cool.
Yeah, and while it did pain me to take mine apart, the only solace I was able to take was that I was turning into yet another Star Destroyer, just a earlier version, which I still need to finish.
Well, it is going to be a yard long or bigger.
Oh, so yeah.
I don't expect that one to be done overnight.
Yeah. So it was at least, it wasn't in vain. It's towards a greater purpose. And, that's one of those things. Like I said, it's like most of the time, and that one was actually together for the longest time. That was together the entire time. I built it at my grandmother's house when we were in Maryland.
Yeah.
Because it was in 2004 when we moved.
Okay.
We didn't stay at home that year for Christmas. We went up to my grandmother's house. I built it there. And this thing took me a day and a half to build.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. Over 3,000 parts.
Yeah, it's a lot of parts.
Yeah. So, and I'm like, okay, I've put way too much effort into this thing to just let it go. So, thankfully, I was able to, it was constructed so that you had an interior structure, and then the sides were basically panels that you built, and then you had the bridge. Mm-hmm. The bridge I could leave alone. It was actually, it pretty much just sat there. It wasn't connected in, so that I could take off and set to the side. And the panels I just split up into two pieces, and the structure I was able to kind of collapse a little bit and fold in. So I was able to get everything still mostly built, put it into the box, so we could take it back home.
And then otherwise it's like, Dad, I'm putting this in the trunk.
Yeah.
I don't care about the luggage.
Well, we had the truck actually at the time, so.
Oh, that's even worse.
And I can tell you, I was so paranoid about that thing flying up the back. And I was like, we're securing this thing down. I don't care what it takes. This thing's not going anywhere.
Give me all the bungees and duct tape you can give me.
Yes. And so when we finally moved into the new house, one of the first things I did was put it together, set it up on my dresser, and that sat there for a good 5 years. Till we moved here.
Well, your brother periodically shot at it.
Yeah, he liked to shoot. I think he was just envious. I think that was his way of showing jealousy, but it's my brother, so he's got to shoot at things.
Yeah, he's into his own thing. So let me break away from the timeline a little bit.
Okay.
And ask you this.
All right.
Coming from your personal experience only, ignoring all the timelines we were just talking about, what do you think you have gained from building Legos all these years? Pretty much the majority of your life.
Life seems so much simpler when I'm building Legos. It not only gives me a challenge, but it's therapeutic for me.
It lets you escape into your own little world?
It does. And honestly, a lot of times where if I'm really stressed and if things are really bothering me, that's when I'm like, I need to build something. It allows me to focus my energy on something that I can tangibly work with. Because a lot of times we get into those things of life where we can't tangibly fix it, but with Legos I can. I can see the problem, I know what I'm going to build, and it allows me to channel that and get my frustrations out. And a lot of times I'll end up with something new that I've never thought to build before. So.
Well, plus I would say it's been a good creative outlet for you.
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, I've been wanting to build that ice castle for years. It wasn't until, last couple weeks ago that I finally sat down and built it.
Yeah, and then, not to be outdone by ice, he built one for fire.
And I will be, not too soon, but soon enough, be building one with earth and air.
Right, so cover all the elements.
Yes. But not one with heart, because, who cares about that? So, that's probably the most thing that Lego's done for me. Although, since you brought it up, one of the things that you have been privy to play, and hopefully other people will be as well.
Ah, yes.
Is my infamous Lego game, which finally has a name. Long live the king.
Long live the king, formerly known as Jennifer's Old Clothes. Jennifer's Old Clothes. So named because that was the box he kept it in.
Yes. Some of the other mediums of Lego.
Yeah.
We're familiar with it in the sets you buy in the store, but it's much more than that. Okay, first of all, when we talked about how they came out with Technic, with the beams and the connectors and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Well, they started incorporating that and motors and computers. And back in '98, which I actually have a few of these, was debuted the Lego Mindstorms, which is basically you can build robots out of Legos.
Oh yeah, I remember those.
And in fact, one of the neat things, and one thing that I'm probably going to look into getting involved with, is they actually have these for kids in schools, where they can be part of a Lego robotics team. And
Okay.
they have to not only build the robot, but they have to program it according to a certain mission.
Like to walk across the room and do something.
Yeah, or to follow a line. Like that you. In fact, that was actually one of the things the Mindstorm set came with this fold-out piece of paper that had basically a circle drawn on it, and because it had light sensors, it had touch sensors. I think in future versions they had color sensors that could detect between red, yellow, and blue. I don't know if they've ever done a sound sensor or not. I think that might be a little too high for them. But, I mean, it was really cool. And unfortunately, because when I first got this, I really didn't know anything about programming. I was kind of lost on it. I just honestly wanted to get it built together, like push play and let it do its thing. Like, I didn't really know what it was about.
And it's like, oh, you didn't program me, so the only thing I can do is explode!
Well, thankfully I never did that. But as a result of the success of Mindstorms and Star Wars, they came out with a combination. They had one car called the Droid Developer Kit, which is you could build your own little Lego R2-D2.
Okay.
That was the nice thing about this was it already had, I think, like 5 ready-made programs in it. You just selected which program you want and hit play, and it would go about its thing. So, like, little R2 could, move up a little bit, turn, stop for a few seconds. It would make a few beeps, because R2 does that.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. But it also had the Dark Side Developer Kit, which had the 4-legged walker from Empire.
Neat.
So you could build that. And, once again, it had the 4 or 5 pre-made programs. You do that, and I actually have that one too. So, unfortunately, it's been quite a long time since I've worked with those. Just for time and that sort of thing. And ideas as well. I think that was probably the biggest problem for me is with those, because of the fact that I wasn't really as good at programming or very knowledgeable about programming, I didn't have a lot of the ideas that I normally had. Because when it came to the robots, I was more interested in the mechanical workings of it and not so much the programming.
Right.
And in college, I did actually looking at being a part of a robotics club, and when I found it was mostly programming, I was very much uninterested. And so I promptly left and never went back to it again. Because I'm like, I don't care about programming. I want to deal with the mechanical aspect. But in addition to Mindstorms, some of the other mediums are video games.
Yes.
Which we've played.
We have indeed.
Lego Star Wars, the first of many successful Lego games. And the great thing about it is, yes, you play as the little Lego guys, and you go around and do stuff. And then with Star Wars, you play through the movies. Well, the cool thing is they incorporate the Lego aspect. So, like, when you shoot a guy, he breaks into different parts,
and you can build things as required. And I do like the games because they have a very lighthearted feel. So it's sort of like,
yeah.
I mean, Star Wars is some of it already is lighthearted to begin with. Some of it, not all.
Yeah.
But it has its own sense of humor and wit.
Yes.
Because there's no talking. It's all done with pure pantomime and expression.
Right.
And it really works. It's quite fun.
Yeah, and
I did enjoy it.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I think because it's not just straight gameplay. How would you classify it? More of Mario Brothers or more like Zelda? Between the two.
Probably more like Zelda, just in terms of with Mario, it's usually more of a straightforward game. Mm-hmm. With there's some things you have to find secret areas and whatnot. But with Zelda, there's always a puzzle aspect to it.
Yeah.
And the Lego games, from what I've seen, have definitely a factor of that, where you have to not only go through the level and shoot the bad guys or hack them with your lightsaber or whatever,
right,
but you also have to figure stuff out, like where to go and what do I do to put this together. That kind of thing.
Which I do remember very much enjoying, because I think there was one level where you and I both racked our brains on it for like a good 20 minutes before we figured it out.
Yeah, like, where in the world do we go? Oh, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
I was wondering what this did.
And I will say, now, would you say it was more fun to play with a friend or by yourself? Or were there aspects of each that you enjoyed?
I would say each had its own merit. Like, it's good for the more tedious stuff, like trying to find stuff, like the extra bonus things, it's better to do alone because your friend might not have patience for it.
True.
But like when you're trying to battle stuff or you go through the level, it's more fun to experience it together.
Yeah.
Especially if you're both having fun.
Yeah. That's is it easier to battle more guys with a friend when you're helper guy? Because granted, even if you're playing by yourself, you still have that second player with you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's computer run. Is it easier when you have a human player controlling it?
It usually is.
Because they're actually doing something useful.
It usually goes without saying.
Unless they accidentally hack your head off, which does happen occasionally.
That usually goes without saying for the most part for video games. Is if you have a second character who has to be there, it's better when someone else is controlling it.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Because other times they just get in the way. I do want to mention, I know nothing about it, but we haven't mentioned this yet. They had another sort of medium in the same vein that was more like an action figure with Bionicle.
Oh yes. And it's funny you mentioned that. I was just about to get to that. Let's do a very basic rundown of Bionicle. Bionicle was done, the best way I can describe it is like Power Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
You had 5 different characters, each with a completely different color, each with a different element. You had like fire, ice, earth, air, rock, that sort of thing. Water. I mean, they would always reevaluate them every couple years.
Yeah.
Very much like Power Rangers, Just a new skin. Same element, new skin. My brother actually had a couple of those, and they were kind of neat. But one of the things, and they had their own storyline, one of the things Bionicle gave rise to was not only were they a successful lineup.
They were like a cartoon, weren't they?
They were not only a CG movie, they had their own comic book series.
That's true.
Which I actually have a couple of those, because they would give the Lego magazines away for free.
Mm-hmm.
They also would come with a comic book. So you got and guess what company produced the comic book?
DC?
Yes.
All right, got it.
So as soon as I saw that, I'm thinking, all right, they've got they're doing licensed material with Star Wars and Harry Potter. They're in with DC. Come on, Batman.
Well, plus
it took them a few years before they got there, but
and then they eventually went with Marvel because they made Spider-Man.
Well, yeah, which was pretty cool, and that was the other thing. They did Spider-Man before Batman, so I'm thinking, okay, you're doing licensed material with and Harry Potter was Warner Brothers too, so you've got it in with Warner Brothers, you've got it in with DC, you've got it in with a comic book. Where's Batman? This makes too much sense.
You're just like, come on, Batman, bring in the Batman.
It was like I was literally foaming at the mouth waiting for this. So as soon as I heard the news, I was absolutely thrilled, as I've said before.
I will say this, I was happy to see Spider-Man Lego.
Yes. And since
I didn't buy any, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have as strong an attachment as you did. I still like them, but I don't have that ability to build whole sets like you did. I'll talk about my experience in a minute.
Well, and okay. Oh, the other thing is, because of the comic book, they had the movie, there was also a card game that they did.
I did not know this.
There was also a CD, a music CD, that was as a result of, I'm not sure if it was the soundtrack to the movie, but there was a Bionicle CD that they marketed at one point. I mean, they had Bionicle book bags that you could change the different mask out. They had Bionicle shoes where you could, it was plastered everywhere.
Well, not only that, but they now have like Lego sword and shields that are life size where you can.
Yes.
They're foam and you can smack your brother.
So yeah, they've had everything. You name it, Lego has made a version of it.
Including a theme park.
Multiple ones that they will soon be building one in Florida. So yay, close enough.
Yeah.
Ice cube trays, salt and pepper shakers, cookie cutters, egg timers. Literally, you name it, you can find anything you can think of Lego-fied somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not currently, but certainly at somewhere in history. One of the interesting things, it's also now an online multiplayer game, Lego Universe.
Not surprising.
Which is kind of neat, because not only do you go around as your character and do your usual RPG stuff, but you can collect parts and build your own area, and people can come visit your area. One interesting aspect that I think is just kind of neat to see it happen is not only do people like me build their own models, but some people take it to a whole nother level and do sculpture with it.
Yeah, like life-size sculpture.
I remember, there's a couple images I remember seeing where one was what was called the Bogman. And it was it looked like a guy walking, but like his legs were like part of the base.
Mm-hmm.
And like they were built like he was growing out of it. And this was all done with just random parts. Not even blocks. Actually, most of them looked like gears and axles and stuff like that. And it's just impressive to see it. And I've seen one that looked, and Lego even took this and incorporated into their products, did a Lego mosaic thing where you could take any picture, send it to them, and they would create a flat mosaic where you could build it. You could build a picture of yourself out of Legos.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I do know the store near us, they have a Darth Vader at the entrance.
Yes.
As well as what looks like an Egyptian something or other. A sarcophagus, I believe it is.
Yes.
And I've also seen, like, on your...
And there is also a couple of them that travel to certain ones. Like, they have a Batman at one point.
That's cool. I have seen online that someone did one out of the 8-bit Mario, which was pretty cool.
Yes, they've definitely done that before. You talked about theme parks. There's not just one. The first one started in Billund, Denmark, and it was built in 1968.
I didn't realize it was that old.
Yeah. Most people don't. That's pretty much when Walt Disney World was, or about when Walt Disney World came out. And I think it honestly was because of the success of Walt Disney World that they said, if Disney can build a theme park about their theme, we can build a theme park about our theme. And they did, and it was very successful. So much so that they now have one in Windsor, England, Carlsbad, California. They just had one, I believe, a couple years ago. I want to say either 06 or 07. Built in Günzburg, Germany. And now they're about to build one in Winter Haven, Florida. It should be ready to open in 2011. Or at the end of 2011.
Okay.
And they're planning to have a Legoland park in, I'm probably saying this wrong, Iskandar, Malaysia in 2012.
That's cool.
You think Disney's got a lot of parks, Lego's got more.
It'll be interesting to see, because I have seen some of the pictures, because it's not just like, when you think of a Lego theme park, you think, oh, is it, you walk through and see a bunch of sculptures? No, they have rides and stuff.
No, they have rides. In fact, they have different sections of the park devoted to different themes themselves. Like, you go to one section, there's just nothing but castle.
Nice.
And so you'll have, I've seen pictures of this. It's the one from California. They have a roller coaster designed to look like a dragon.
Cool.
And they have, a pirate section where you go on a boat, and there's a life-size pirate ship built out of Legos.
Nice.
In the water, as you're going through.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And now they do have their mini Legoland area, whereas they have, they'll do a full replica of an actual city in Lego form. Like, they have a full replica of London. And a full Lego replica, I believe, of New York. And I think there's one of New Orleans, too. But don't quote me on that.
Okay, before we move on, let me ask you something that you might not be too happy with.
Okay.
Me mentioning.
Okay.
What do you think of some of their competitors? I know of two, which would be Mega Block and I think Best Block.
Yeah, those are the two that I'm familiar with. They have a new competitor now. I can't remember the name of it. I see it at Walmart every time I go in now. They just came up. As far as their competitors, I say, you know what? I'm kind of glad, actually, that they have competitors. Because I don't want...
Competition keeps the quality.
Exactly. And that's one of the things about Lego that I've always enjoyed was the quality and obviously the different ideas they came up with. But for one thing, this is something I've actually been very tempted to buy, but I can't bring myself to do it. Mega Bloks has Halo sets. And they just look really cool. And it's like, it's Halo. I mean, come on, it's the Warthog and the Wraith and the Scorpion tank. Oh, they're so awesome, but it's Mega Bloks. I can't bring myself to do it.
Yeah.
Because they're a lesser quality. Plastic, and I know they're not going to hold up as well as my Legos.
That's always been one of my hang-ups with Legos. Not a lot of video game sets, with the exception of Prince of Persia, but that was more based on the movie.
Right. But, as we've said, and actually, here's one thing that's rather interesting. Lego and Mega Bloks have both, certainly over the last 10 years, have been in really close competition with each other, which I honestly think has helped both companies. Because not only did Lego do Star Wars, Harry Potter, Spider-Man, Batman, and Prince of Persia that we mentioned, and Toy Story, but also Mega Bloks did Pirates of the Caribbean, and they now have Iron Man.
That's right.
And actually, interesting thing happened. Spider-Man was over at Lego for the first two movies, and he jumped to Mega Bloks for number 3. Not that I'm saying anything.
Interesting story.
But there might be a coincidence there.
Interesting thing I'd like to mention. this has no huge thing of importance, but we have a little story, a mutual story that Matt and I can share about Spider-Man and Lego that you can find on YouTube.
Oh, yes.
Look up Death of Spider-Man.
Yes.
And
look for an image of fire.
What we did was
Well, there's a little bit of backstory to this. We'll give them this. Okay, first of all, my brother, as we said before, really liked to shoot my Star Destroyer with his airsoft gun. Now, thankfully, it was airsoft. It wasn't actual BBs, so there was no damage done. But he kept doing this, and finally I'm like, all right, I've got to do something to get him out of my room and stop attacking my prized possessions here. So I was like, you know what?
Here's some own men you can have. Shoot them.
Yes. And I'm like, I was very attached to most of my Lego men, but I was like, I've got like 4 or 5 Spider-Men. And it's like, I don't feel like I need to have an army of Spider-Men. I'll give him one. He can do with whatever he wants with. He ended up shooting the leg off. I gave him one. He shot the leg off. He shot half the hand off, which I'm like, that's just really good accuracy right there. If you could shoot half the hand, not even the whole hand, just half the hand off of a Lego guy. He also put a dent in, I think, the bottom of the torso, like where the legs meet the torso.
Yeah.
And so finally he's like, he was in his room doing something like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm going to burn it. I'm like, what? And I'm like, all right, well, and then all of a sudden I was like, all right, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right.
And I happen to be here for this.
Yes, and thankfully Andrew was at my house to witness this. I was like, okay, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. So I grabbed my video camera, and my brother puts basically a funeral pyre out of matches.
We were going to give him a hero's funeral.
Hero's funeral. And so he puts a little Lego Spider-Man on it.
We also soaked Spider-Man in hairspray.
Yes, because we wanted to make sure he was burned. And then, you know what? Go watch the video to find out the rest.
Because magic happened.
Yes.
And no, he didn't get up and start dancing, but it was close to it.
But he did go from red, white, and blue to black.
Yeah, oddly enough. I do also want to mention, I touched upon this a little earlier, but I have to mention this because this is also something you can find either on DVD or online. One of the things I really liked when I see people do this kind of thing with the stop motion is they did one, I don't know exactly if Lego did it or it was a fan made one, but they did one for the scene in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, where they go to Camelot.
Yes, if you have the 2-disc version of Monty Python on the Holy Grail, you actually have this.
Yes,
on the DVD,
and they do that whole scene.
It's the song from the Knights of the Round Table.
They do that. They do that whole scene with Lego stop motion animation, but they move the mouths a bit with, I guess, Flash or whatever animating tool they used. You can find it online if you don't have the DVD, but I really enjoyed that, and I have seen other people, younger kids, which I'm debunking your earlier theory, younger kids playing with stop motion cameras.
Oh, I'm not. I want to clarify. I'm not saying that they don't. I'm just saying, generally speaking...
Yeah, I would give you that it's not a probably majority thing, but there's definitely kids out there who like playing with cameras, stop motion. I mean, they even sell little cameras with like a Lego design over it just for stop motion.
In fact, back in, I want to say 2000, 2001, Lego actually came out with a set of Lego Movie, where it was a camera, and it was a pretty neat thing. They actually even had a little Lego Steven Spielberg.
That's great.
It is great. In fact, I actually have the keychain to that. That was their director of choice, obviously.
If I was Steven Spielberg and was like, I have a Lego of me, that's going to my office.
Yes. Where it was very basic. It was a dinosaur, a T-Rex. It had a specially designed base plate to recreate an earthquake. Okay. And it had some buildings. And it was in like one of those old style background things where like you could roll the page.
Okay,
the paper. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Where you could do that to simulate like somebody walking, only they're standing in place and the background's moving. So they were encouraging this.
Well, good.
Which was pretty neat. And that is actually kind of what started. Actually, no. I'm sorry. I'm backtracking. This wasn't an 01. This was late 90s because this was prior to Star Wars Legos, because this is what helped garnish and helped give rise to the licensed themes. Because in addition to that, they also had an officially licensed Jurassic Park 3 set, which was some dinosaur. It was a tree and the airplane crashed, so you could recreate that scene.
That's cool.
So that was kind of neat. And then when they came in with Spider-Man, it was initially done as the movie theme area, but it quickly, went into just straight up Spider-Man. Because they were trying to recreate the scenes. Like, they had the train scene, and they had, Green Goblin on the glider, and that sort of thing. So they were thinking, hey, people want to make movies. Then they realized, oh, people just want the sets to play Spider-Man. Awesome. They're selling either way.
It's a shame they didn't continue that.
It is, because I'll say this much. Even though the third movie, and this is not to get into debate or anything, we'll do that on another podcast.
Yes.
Even though the third movie did not meet up to our expectations, it did have some really cool scenes that could have been done very well in Lego form. Mm-hmm. So
it would have been interesting to see how they would have done like the taxi cab held up by the...
Yeah, because they actually did that scene in Mega Block form, but it was Mega Blocks.
Yeah.
So it wasn't done as well. The other thing, and I'm kind of jumping back here a little bit, one thing Lego has, in addition to the basic sets, the Mindstorms, the movie set that they did, they still also continue to do things for other demographics just as well. For instance, they still produce Duplo sets for the younger than 5 range. In fact, they've actually had a license to do Cars from the movie Cars.
Yeah, okay.
And it's just for Duplo. It's not for any other thing. So the kids can sit there. They've got I don't even know the characters' names, but they've got their Tow Mater. So
Duplo would be like for the ages who are not
for basically
the normal ones.
Yeah, and it's primarily bigger. These are the ones, I'm sure you played with these before, the bigger pieces.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Interesting thing about those are actually compatible with normal Lego bricks.
I think, would it be Tyco?
No,
I'm saying like the other brand, because I know I had a Tyco building block.
Possibly, yeah, if they're bigger blocks, then it's possibly Tyco. They might have done that.
I had a Tyco teddy bear. It was a teddy bear, and you unzip the back, and it had all the blocks inside.
Interesting.
I think we still have that somewhere.
Really? I guess I was just so...
Except I never called them Tyco.
Yeah, I probably called them Lego.
No, I didn't, actually.
Okay.
I gave them an entirely different name after a long while.
Okay.
My friend was playing Space Quest, I think it's called. It's a computer game.
Okay.
It's a DOS game.
Yeah.
It's like point and click.
Yeah, I remember those.
And there was a character in it. It's a side character, had no relevance, but I thought the name was so funny because those games are so funny to begin with. Mm-hmm. His name was called Festerblatz. And I thought the name was so amusing that's what I named the teddy bear.
Festerblatz?
Festerblatz.
Wow.
I think it's Space Quest 6 that it's from.
Oh, wow.
I know the main character's name was Roger Wilco.
Now, see, I remember that name, Roger Wilco, but not necessarily from that. Maybe it was just one of those names that was used in a generic basis.
Maybe. I don't know.
But, anyway. So, yeah, you've got Duplo, but you also have what's called Belleville. And Lego's actually done a number of different incarnations of trying to make a product designed strategically and just for girls.
Okay, I was just about to say, I have no idea what Belleville is.
Yeah, Belleville, no, it's actually kind of an interesting way of designing these things. For instance, the people, they're not minifigures, but they're not dolls. They're kind of in between.
Okay.
So they're probably about the size of your average action figure.
Okay.
And they do have parts, however, they're generally speaking some of the larger parts. Mm-hmm. But they do things like there was one with a castle, like a princess castle.
Yeah.
Where you had your princess and I don't remember some, but you built the castle and had some base places. There was also, I remember one for stables, like horse and stables. Those are the only two to remember, but they have, it's kind of like Barbie in the sense of you have the actual dolls, they're not Lego figures, but they still have that Lego element to them.
Okay.
And that's been obviously not as successful as, say, Star Wars and stuff like that for the mainstream, but successful enough that they've been able to keep that up throughout the years.
Right.
And which is great because...
I guess to help offset, my little girl doesn't really like Star Wars as much as this, but there's something just for her that she could have.
True, although...
I'm being very general.
You are. I'm not sure if you've heard the recent story about the little girl who actually got teased at school for liking Star Wars.
No.
Yes.
I don't keep up with Star Wars.
There was, I think she was 7 years old, mm-hmm. and she had a Star Wars lunchbox and thermos that she took every day to school, and one day she came home, and she said, her mom was getting her ready for school, And she said, oh, I don't want that one. I want to take my pink one. And her mom's kind of like, but you love that one. You don't go anywhere with that one. What's wrong here? And the girl just started crying. She said, the boys at school are teasing me for liking Star Wars. And her mom finally said, you know what, that's not right, because, I mean, that's a form of bullying. Yeah. And they were giving her a really hard time about this. I mean, you hear about kids being cruel. This is probably one of the worst. So the mom just said, I need some help. Any of her friends, what can we do? Well, not only did she get flooded with emails from the Star Wars fan community, but Ashley Eckstein, who's in charge of her universe, and also does the voice of Ahsoka on the Clone Wars, sent her, I think at least one of each of the different products that they make, just on the house. I mean, she is just getting so much a show of appreciation for not only being a girl that likes Star Wars, but for taking a beating, for taking one for the team. They're like, you know what? We're not going to let this happen again. We're going to show her support. So I think in this day and age, you don't have to necessarily target something directly towards girls to make them like it. I think you just have to do it in a way that they can appreciate it on a different level than guys do.
Right.
And I think that's what Lego has done is over the years. I mean, if you look at what the product is today, as I've said, it's more than just basic blocks.
Yes.
And they've certainly done a lot to, as I've said before, going back to incorporating learning and play at the same time, and always trying to get to that next level. And I think that's where the company as a whole continues to succeed and be very profitable, but also give us the fans more to look forward to.
Right.
And that's one thing is, I mean, every year at this time, I look forward, actually, about October, November, that's when I start to see images and new sets and new things. And I look forward to it because I think, okay, what new parts are they going to come out with, or what new product lines are they going to come out with?
What new concept will they experiment with?
Like, for instance, they're coming out with this new Pharaoh's Quest that's kind of like the Mummy.
Okay, cool.
Which is really cool. It's like, I mean, one of the sets is a pyramid. And it's got, trapdoors and stuff. And it's got a giant scorpion. It's got, its henchmen are mummies.
Nice.
And it's got really cool stuff. So I'm looking forward to that one.
I can tell you're excited.
Yeah. So, and that's one of those things. It's like, even if I really like what Lego is doing creatively as far as their own themes, yes, I do want to continue to see them do Star Wars and some of the other licensed stuff that they have been successful with. But I always like to see, okay, what are they going to come out with next? How are they going to do this? One of the things, I saw it before, I saw it earlier today when I was checking my email. I'm so thrilled about it. They're finally doing a bank. Why am I thrilled about doing a bank? Well, they've had a police station for I don't know how many years, but they've never had a bank. So it's like, why would you not do a bank? The robbers need something to rob so that the police have a reason to go and catch the robbers. Because they always give the police robbers to put in jail, but they never give them anything to do.
So it's like, you're going to jail. For what?
For being a criminal.
Jaywalking.
Yeah. So now, I mean, and it's a great little set. It's probably, $20, $30 set. But it's got the bank, and it's got plenty of windows. It's actually got a little ATM, which is kind of cool. It's obviously got your robber, I think, on a bike. It's got a police car, and it's got an armored car. And I'm like, this is perfect. This is awesome.
Will it double as an actual piggy bank?
That I don't know.
Because that's a good idea.
That would be a good idea. You know what? You could probably convert it into an actual piggy
probably
bank.
could.
Based upon the way it's designed, it's very basic, standard rectangular design. Obviously, they put enough detail into it, which is kind of nice. One thing I do want to touch on, because this is something I've been really cool about. Okay, you know how much I love the 1930s. Just that era, that look of cars and everything. And certainly one of the things that they always incorporated with different Batmobile designs was the fenders. Yeah. And I always wanted fenders, Lego fenders. And when I would go through different designs, trying, okay, how can I put the fenders? A few years ago, I want to say 06, 07, they came out with fender pieces. And it adds that extra amount of dimension and detail to it, and they've continued doing that ever since, and I love them for it. It's like, that was probably the greatest piece Lego's ever done, because I felt like it was made just for me.
Well, we've been going on a little bit, so I think I'm going to break this up just a tad.
Okay.
And kind of talk about things I've done with Lego.
Okay.
Because there's a very big difference between what Matt has been rambling on about.
Yes, and I apologize if it sounds like I've been rambling. But...
And what I've been able to do, because unlike Matt, I don't have the ability to just glance at something and build it off the top of my head, or be able to build the set that I have bought without the use of instructions.
Now that comes with time. Don't think I could do this when I was 10. No.
And also, growing up, I mean, I did like Lego, and my friends liked Lego as well, and we would play with the figures and stuff. I didn't have a lot of sets, I remember. I did have two, like, they were looked like suitcases just to hold the pieces, and they were, like, officially licensed Lego containers. So I had a lot of pieces, very, very few parts. And if I did have a set, it was, like, maybe one or two very tiny ones.
Yeah.
Like, I think one of the sets that I remember having instructions, I still have the instructions for, was, like, for, like, a very basic Robin Hood kind of thing, where it was Robin Hood and, like, a wheelbarrow attached to a horse.
Okay.
And later I got a couple of other sets. I had some of the underwater play set, the Aquanauts as we called them.
Yeah.
I had one of the space ones. I remember the one had like a three-wheeled moon rover kind of deal.
Okay.
But for the most part, mostly parts. And so here's kind of where I didn't have the technical imagination to build things to design. So I had just imagination, plain old imagination. So here's kind of where my growing up differed from you in terms of also what I was into at the time. Like, we talked lastly about Mega Man. It was very much based around robots. And to me, Lego is my way of building a little army of robots built out of bricks.
Okay.
And with imagination, you can see it. And so here's what I did. And again, my big hang-up for a long while, still kind of is no video game Lego. Now, granted, doing Mario would be a little tough. I agree with you. Mega Man, much more doable. Metroid, way more doable.
Yeah.
But didn't have any of it. So here's kind of what I did. I had a couple guys, one with a girl hairpiece, and I had Robin Hood. And so what I did was I built a cube house for them to live in.
Okay.
So that was their house. And so I was like, okay, here's what they live. And it was all done with random colored bricks, no big attention to detail.
Yeah.
Here's where they live. All right, so what are they going to do? They're going to have to be plagued by some villains.
Of course.
So what I did was I had a flat, not totally flat, but it was a little bit raised, green cube, like a base plate. And what was popular at the time when I was building this was Mario Brothers 3. The reason why I reference this is because Bowser and his kids rode around on what they call doom ships, which looked like flying wooden pirate ship type deals with propellers. Didn't have a lot to work with, so what I did was, all right, I want to make my own version of a doom ship, but not make it a boat. So what I did was I colored the whole thing, the top layer with black, because as a child, black equals evil. Not always the case, but the villain wears black.
But it makes sense.
So that was the base play, and I didn't really give much thought as to how it flew, but it was flying. And on top of it, what rode it was my army of evil robots. And I don't remember what I called them. I had names for them all. I don't remember them now, but some had one of them I remember looked like a snake. He looked kind of like a set of stairs, but I gave him some features. And also, I don't know what these pieces are called, but they're the kind that they have the prongs on them. They usually have the two of the raised, what do you call those things? Like little dots on top of the Lego. What do you call those?
Studs.
Studs, okay. It had the two studs and a section of grooves where you can attach it for movement.
Oh, yeah, hinge piece.
The hinge piece. And so when I was looking at that, I didn't really have anything to attach it to. I don't know why I had these pieces. I didn't have anything for movement. I didn't have many hinges until I got the Aquanauts.
Yeah.
Because they had some of their subs had like arms that you can reach out and grab things with magnets.
Yeah.
But I had a bunch of those connector pieces, those movement pieces. But when you look at them, trying to be creatively, they kind of look like a skull, at least the top half.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, this will be kind of like a skull army. So I got as much of those as possible that I had, and those were the faces.
Yeah, if you do kind of flat, like...
Right. So those were sort of like the ones that I could afford, those were the skull guys.
Yeah.
And so I made like a little army of them.
Okay.
And those were the bad guys. So like, okay, so now I have some guys to fight. But I don't have a lot of things to fight with on the good guy side. I have Robin Hood, and he has a bow and arrow. That's not enough to defeat an army. So what do I need? And again, I'm a big fan of Mega Man. So I created a little robot guy. And what I used was the basic cube wheel.
Right.
And I put another connector piece that we'd use for like a propeller.
Okay.
And then I put like a clear slanted piece on top of that.
Okay.
For like the glass visor / this is what he would look through.
Yeah.
And so this is my little robot guy with a gun cannon on wheels.
Okay.
And he ended up being the protector of the humans.
Nice. And
so, okay, and I would have battles with these guys. And of course the nice thing about Legos is you can pretend you shoot them and they explode.
Yeah.
And, of course, for robots, they can be rebuilt.
Yes.
And I had endless fun with that. And I even made little rivals for them, too. And then I ended up building them up by giving them body armor to make them a little taller, so it looked like they had like a chest.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And one I had, like, it was ended up being smaller because I don't know what the piece was originally for, but it was actually like a thin for wheel. Mm-hmm. Same like shape, but it was thinner. Okay. So he was already going to be smaller. So like, okay, what can I do with this? I didn't have also the big round one for the propeller, but I had the small one for the small propellers. Mm-hmm. And it had the two sides, so I guess it was like for a wagon wheel.
Okay.
So like, okay, I can use this. So I used that as the front half was the gun. Yeah. But the back half I put a propeller on. So this one flew. Okay. So this was the difference because the other two just rolled around.
Yeah. So now you have a clear distinction between these two and this other one.
Right. And my friends got involved. They got involved with that. They had some of their own Legos. So they built their own little robot armies, and we battled with that. So I had a lot of fun with that. That's kind of where my creativity went in terms of I don't have the means. I don't have the instructions to build sets. I don't have the instructions or the technical know-how to build complex things. But what I do have is imagination.
Yeah. Well, and
that's how I can play.
That's the great thing about Lego. As long as you have an imagination, you can have fun with them.
Right. And I always have. And I still have those. They're in storage somewhere. But I never had the heart to throw them away. I never would want to get rid of them.
No, you shouldn't. No.
I've always liked them. So that's why I say I like Lego, just not nearly as much as you.
Well, you like it differently.
Yes, and I've had my different development.
As you're sitting here talking about, I'm thinking you went more the route of you were able to build your robot armies and have battles and play with them. So your imagination was, okay, you built what you needed to give you a physical representation of what you saw in your head.
Yes.
With the guys, and then you went from there and played with them. Whereas I was more of the type of person where, obviously being a huge Batman fan, had to build a Batcave. And then I went through several incarnations of those. Also went through several incarnations of Batmobiles. I believe the first good-sized Batmobile I ever built was the animated style. Mm-hmm. So very long front, very sleek, swept-backed fins. Turned out really well. Actually used... In the 6th grade, we had a history or social studies project where we had to do a report on a country. My country was Colombia. We had to build a float. Guess what I built my float out of? Legos. The entire float. So it was really cool. But I remember those couple days in class, we were supposed to bring materials and build our floats. So I would just bring my bucket of Legos. Sit there and build the float. And everyone's like,
he's cheating.
He's playing. It's like, no, I'm building my float. And since it was Colombia, the only thing I could think of was Colombian coffee. So my float had just giant coffee mug on it.
So a giant coffee mug on wheels?
Yes, basically. Well, I think what I did, I think I had like a platform for it, and they just stuck the coffee mug in there. But I can't remember the guy's name. I think something Vasquez. Something. I don't know. The guys. I just remember Colombian coffee. I guess I watched way too much TV as a kid.
We know that.
But in addition to having my float, I also had the Batmobile escorting it. Because we did a little parade for our project, and so I had the Batmobile, and right behind it, the Colombian coffee mug float. But I do remember, I think it was in 6th grade, somewhere between 6th and 7th. My mom would watch Teacher's Kids. She decided to quit driving a bus for a while, stay home and watch Teacher's Kids. And one summer, she was able to pick up a couple extra kids that she was going to watch during the week. Mm-hmm. And they were, I think, a couple years younger than me. It was this boy and his brother, and they love Legos just as much as I do. So we just basically, it wasn't even babysitting for my mom. It was just people she was getting paid for me to play with, which is great. We'd stay the whole day up in my room building Legos. It was great.
And I will say this. I think it was last year you gave me the newest pirate ship.
Yes, because they debuted, and I'm like, he's got to have this even if I have to buy the thing for him.
If you haven't figured out, I am a fan of pirates. Yes. I like mostly stems from the Pirates of the Caribbean movie, or Caribbean movie, however you want to pronounce it correctly. But I do like it. It's a neat idea.
Yes.
And so he got me that set, and I was like, I'm going to build it here, my parents' house. And for whatever reason, it's not like we haven't been, but my mom really liked it. She was like, seeing you on the floor putting Legos together on Christmas Day, it just makes it seem right. It makes Christmas feel like it's a family night. We're a family here, with you on the floor playing Legos, me in the kitchen, Dad watching football, or whatever else is on TV. or messing with whatever he got.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are watching one of the movies we got for Christmas. And it was just a really nice time. So I did enjoy that quite a bit, and so did Mom.
I'm glad that I could bring your house so much joy.
But of course, it's sort of like, so what Lego set did Matt get you this year? Because you've gotten me a Lego something a couple years in a row now.
Has it been that many?
Yeah.
What did I get you before?
I know one year you made me a Mario Lego.
Oh, yeah.
But that was like in addition to something else.
But I just remember...
Because we had a long debate because I was so upset that they never made Lego Mario.
Yeah, well, there was that. Plus, the interesting way was how I wrapped it.
Yes.
Because I did not have... I mean, it was just the guy, and I'm like, well... I don't really need a giant box. What I have, and I happen to have, for whatever reason, I had a random jewelry box in one of my drawers. So I'm like, all right, this will work. Whatever. So I put it and wrapped it up. And I think your mom says something effective. He's not going to propose, is he?
Yeah. Because if so, we need to have some talks. And I'm like, I hope not, because if so, I need to have some talks.
Yes.
Thankfully, no. We were all very relieved and amused that it was, in fact, a Lego Mario. It would have been horrible if it was a Lego ring. And I'd be like, I don't know what to say about this, Matt.
Yeah.
On one hand, this is kind of creepy, kind of cool, but mostly creepy.
Yeah. I don't even know what... Yeah. Thankfully, that was not the case.
So let me ask you this.
But, well, before you say that, I just do want to mention that, you were talking about how much your mom enjoyed you building your Legos and your dad watching football. It's funny because my mom can't stand it. When I'm sitting there, she's like, why can't you put that together someplace else? Like, because, I open it up and the first thing I want to do is build it. And she's like, do it later. I'm like, why? It's fair. It's interesting because I'm not sure if it was last Christmas or the one before. I usually we have a later dinner, but, we usually go to church, and we're doing this year again. We go to midnight mass. Mm-hmm. And then we go home and go to sleep because we're all tired from going to midnight mass because we've been up since who knows when.
Right.
Especially when and if I have to work on Christmas Eve. Thankfully, I don't have to this year, but there have been years where I had to.
Right.
And so, the next morning, it's funny because, it used to be where, okay, you guys can't get up till 8. Now they're dragging us out of bed at 9.
Yeah.
And so we go do the thing, and it's like, well, generally, usually we'll do that. We'll kind of get up, open our presents, and Mom will make a big breakfast. We only have 2 meals on Christmas Day. We have big breakfast and a big early-ish dinner, like about 3 or 4.
Right.
And so, usually it's like, well, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying in my pajamas. Mm-hmm. So I was in my pajamas building Legos, and then I looked at a picture of me from like 10 years ago where I was in my pajamas building Legos.
And so, things haven't changed much.
It's a tradition at my house, and I'd like to keep that tradition. I'm not sure how that tradition is going to keep when I get married, but hopefully I'll find a way to work it in at some point. I just need to find a very understanding wife.
Yes. Who will buy you at least one Lego set so you can play with it. Or you could build, if you have kids, give them Lego.
Oh, yes, and trust me, if they don't like Lego, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Well, it will be like, the kids who have parents who are obsessed with model trains, but they're not allowed to touch.
No, my kids will be allowed to touch.
No, I'm just saying because sometimes they can't do it, but they don't want to.
Yeah.
But who knows?
But I think it'd be more of the case of parents or, especially dad who's obsessed with sports and his kids aren't interested. That's kind of, it's like, I'm not going to push my kids to be interested in anything. I just hope they're interested in Legos so that they can get the same enjoyment using stuff I already have, so I don't have to go out and buy them.
There will be enough of it. The only thing you probably have to buy is the Duplo stuff.
Yeah. But at least that, that's money well spent.
Indeed.
And that's the thing is, like, Lego's given me so much enjoyment that actually, I haven't told you about this. 11th grade, we had to do a project on a company. So I, of course, picked Lego.
Right.
And here's an interesting fact, is it was mostly started out as a discussion of the stock market.
Stock market. Okay.
Because you can publicly trade stock.
Right.
Okay. Lego's not a publicly traded company. It's family owned.
Okay.
It's been passed down from generation to generation by the Christensen family that we mentioned before. And that's the other thing is, growing up, going in high school, what did I want to go to college to do? I don't know. I want to work for Lego. I wanted to be one of the guys who designs the sets. That's why I went into engineering. I thought, okay, well, if I'm an engineer, I'll be able to design sets. It's not what engineers do, and I didn't end up doing that, so the dream has failed. For now. I found something else I'm much more passionate about, and that's good with me.
Right.
However, as a result of very much wanting to be in LEGO and that sort of thing, I did my report on LEGO, and the whole objective was, okay, I wasn't very good at public speaking then, much better at it now, since I have more experience with that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea was to promote your company so that people will want to buy stock in it.
Right.
And I, unfortunately, looking back, it's like, wow, I gave way too much of a history lesson. I didn't talk about my passion about it. But the cool thing was, I was able to highlight and actually bring in some of the different sets, like, the train, the electric train that I unfortunately lost the parts of, that I'm not happy with. The Mindstorms sets.
Right.
I had my Lego X-Wing at the time because it was right before Episode 1 came out, so they had Star Wars sets out. So I had my Lego X-Wing. That was the first one I actually was really excited to go buy. I'm like, I'm not waiting for Christmas, I'm buying this now. And it was a great set. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I ended up getting 2, just for whatever reason, and it's still enjoyable today, which is always good. But I remember being very much passionate about the company then, as I am now. And it's one of those things, like, that is a company where if I could buy stock in it, I would. Because it's a company that's brought me a lot of, not just satisfaction in terms of growing up, but like I said, Legos are something where, yes, I enjoy building them just on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, the Lego brand symbol is kind of like the bat symbol to me. Like, I see that and a sense of peace comes over me.
Well, it's been an integral part of your life for so long.
It has. And it's just one of those things where, because it's been such an integral part of my life, and now I can look at it from a different point of view. Mm-hmm. Certainly when I took marketing and I started, it's actually a shame that I did not use Lego for my marketing project, because Lego is a good company to look at from a business aspect, from a marketing standpoint. We talked a little bit about Bookshelf. One thing I do want to touch on real quick is the fan community. Bookshelf is one outlet. However, there are what's called Lego Train Clubs. And this is very much large-scale applications of the model train sets, where they don't just build the trains. It's more about the cities and the buildings and all that kind of stuff. You see, we're talking buildings 6 feet tall. These aren't little sets.
That's a lot of Lego.
It is. This is just one thing that one person will bring in. I remember, it was a few years ago. I actually have a Lego model of Yoda that I had built and then just got turned into parts because whatever, I needed the space and that sort of thing. But they were guys, it was marked off. It was originally like a $90 set. It was marked half off, so it was like $40. People were going in buying 2 or 3 at a time just for the parts. Because they were part of this Lego Train Club and they would build giant buildings, so they need a lot of parts.
Yes.
That's
I do know that at the Lego store you can buy just like a cup of parts.
Yes, and that's one of the things that I like to do as well. In fact, I've done that on many occasions when I've been with you. Is when I find a part that I know I'm going to need a lot of, that's one thing that the sets don't give you. They'll give you more specialized parts, which is great, but not on a mass scale. And in fact, it's really funny because, yes, while I have a lot of Legos, certain stuff I can't make because I don't have enough of the right kind of part. Mm-hmm. Even though I have a ton of parts, if I don't have enough of that right kind of part, you can't build certain things.
I know you were buying windows for a long while.
And I always buy windows anytime they're there, because A, I never know if they're going to be there the next time I go there or not. Mm-hmm. And plus, when you're trying to build a Lego Gotham City 12 by 12 feet,
you need some buildings.
And your Wayne Enterprises tower is planned to be, I think, 10 stories. Yeah, you need a lot of windows.
You need a lot of windows, a windowed building.
Yes, especially with a city like that. So that's certainly one thing that Lego has done. They've seen the Lego Train Club, and this is all over the country. I take it back, all over the world. Mm-hmm. When they see the response from the fan community, they're able to take that the next step and say, okay, this is what people are doing with this. Let's make our products more what they need.
More accessible?
More accessible in terms of, okay, well, if they're going out and they just want the parts, we'll let them buy just the parts, individual parts if they want. And so that's certainly one way that Lego is a great business model, because they're looking and seeing what their customers are using the product as. They're modifying their product, not necessarily the product, but the way that they market the product, the way that they sell the product to account for how their customers are using it. Here's a little interesting tidbit. They have a new model. It's the Imperial Shuttle.
Yeah.
You're familiar with that design.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Going back, I said the Ultimate Collector series with the giant Star Destroyer and X-Wing and all that. Well, they started incorporating minifigures into this because they were realizing, we've got these giant vehicles, but people also want to incorporate it as a playset as well. I think so far the best, the Imperial Shuttle is a great example. One that I'm, cross my fingers, hoping to get for Christmas. If I don't, maybe I'll have enough Christmas money from, say, grandparents so I can add it to my money and go buy it, is the Taint of Four, Princess Leia's ship from A New Hope.
Mm-hmm.
If you've seen that movie, if you haven't seen that movie, seriously get with the program. You're familiar with the ship. Because they did a really great job of incorporating the design, the detail, and the fact that you can put minifigures in it.
Mm-hmm.
So they're starting to realize, hey, people want giant models, but also to be able to use their minifigures. When they were working on the design of the Imperial Shuttle, because they had a little video, that's another thing, they had a little video of it on LEGO's website about the design process. They said they actually looked at a fan's model of the Imperial Shuttle and used some of the design techniques to incorporate into their actual product.
That's pretty cool.
So not only are they seeing what the fans are doing, they're saying, that's a good idea. We're going to borrow that. So to an extent, if I were to branch out and post my pictures on Brickshelf, have more of a body of work to show for myself, LEGO might see that and say, hey, we like that idea. Granted, I wouldn't take credit for it, but that's fine. It would be there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one way that LEGO is really in tune to their customers. I can't tell you how many surveys I've taken on LEGO's website. Because, and they want feedback from people. They want feedback and say, okay, what kind of lineups would you like to do? What are ways we can improve ourselves as a company? How can we improve our product? Tell us. We need to know. Whereas so many other companies just blindly go about it. They don't get a lot of customer feedback. And they don't seek out the customer feedback even more so. I think we briefly talked about on the Batman podcast, certainly today with the internet, people post their comments about films, and directors and movie makers can actually go on and see that comment and use it as feedback.
Right.
LEGO takes it a step further and says, no, we're going to find you. They're not going to go up to you in the mall and be like, excuse me, can you take a survey?
Right.
But they'll send it to their customers. Like if you've done any shopping online or anything like that, or even if you're just a person of the right age group and of the right demographic, a person like myself who does constantly buy Legos and uses them, they want your feedback because that's the only way that they can improve them. They can improve their product, they can improve the way they sell it to you, and improve themselves as a company as a whole.
Well, it's good they do that. It's good that they want to keep up to date. And two things I want to mention.
Okay.
I do remember seeing on a TV show called, I think it's How It's Made.
Mm-hmm.
They went into the Lego factory and showed you pieces getting built, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yes.
So I don't know if that's on DVD somewhere, but if you want to see that, I'm sure you could find it somewhere.
I would hope that's on DVD.
I don't know, to be honest with you. That's a Discovery Channel thing, I think, so they might have it somewhere.
They do Mythbusters, so they might do How It's Made.
On Mythbusters, they had the giant Lego ball.
Oh, yes, I remember that. That was pretty cool.
It's pretty cool.
Now, here, I do want to make a mention of that. One thing that I don't think that when they did it on Mythbusters, they quite realized how most of those giant models are made. But, for instance, the Darth Vader and the Egyptian guy that you mentioned at the Lego store near us, those are more than likely hollow models.
Right.
However, on Mythbusters, they made the ball completely solid. And I do think if they had tried it with a hollow ball, it might have worked better than they had.
I don't know.
I don't know. But at least it's kind of like, if you're making because on the video that they were comparing it to, what if on the video they made it a hollow ball? It's more common to have a hollow model of that size than a solid model, especially with the amount of parts that the average person has.
Yeah, especially...
Even with my parts, I bet you we could... Maybe we should do this. We could probably build we'll say a 4-foot diameter ball, hollow. Mm-hmm. We couldn't do it solid, I'm pretty sure of that. But hollow, we could probably do it.
I do know on that episode that they pretty much couldn't find... They had to go out and just get as many parts as they could, and they had to borrow some from fans because there just weren't enough pieces to make the giant ball.
And I think, and part of the myth was that this was something that a random person had, the enough parts, and you could do a hollow ball with enough parts that the average person could have. And certainly, I remember, one time I was at the Lego store. And I heard about a public store manager that was a huge Lego fan and was in there quite frequently. So I'm like, I can see why. They make six figures. So, but I wonder if, like me, half his paycheck goes to that company. That's one of those interesting things that, yes, it's always nice to see people try different things with Legos, but sometimes you might want to be careful on how you do it, especially when you're trying to roll a giant Lego ball down a ramp.
Yes, and I'm going to mention this. I don't want to go too long on this topic because I know you and some other the fanboys of Lego can rant about this for on and on and on.
Okay.
But one thing we briefly mentioned at the beginning of the podcast
Yes.
was the yellow figure, the traditional yellow texture of the minifigure.
Yes.
When Star Wars came out,
people
wanted Lando to be what Lando should look like. So Star Wars was like, okay, well, if we're going a licensed line, Lando is clearly black. He should look black.
And part of there was a huge debate about that because there was that stigma of saying, okay, up until this is probably 2001, 2002 when they finally debuted it.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking, what did I say, 74 was when the first minifigure came out? You're talking almost 30 years of this just a straight yellow face. Now, when they came in with pirates, they did do some more detail to get like eye patches and scars and things like that because they're pirates.
Right.
But they certainly had the classic two eyes and a smile.
Or Grimace or whatever they were doing for the pirates.
But it was fairly basic. To come along and make Lando black, brown, whatever color you chose,
to make it a bit more accurate.
To make it more accurate because Billy D. Williams is a black person. It's kind of like saying all this time that yellow was white. And that's racist, very much racist on the company. And, it's like, look, I honestly didn't want Lando to be brown because that's not what distinguished him. That's not what distinguishes him to me as the character. What distinguishes him to me as the character is the hairstyle and the mustache. I'm telling you, man, it's the stash. Billy D. Williams can rock a stash.
And the cape and the outfit.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing, too. The cape and the outfit. I mean, and it's the smile. I mean, it was the personality of Lando, not the ethnicity of Lando that made him the character.
Right.
Look at Mace Windu, same thing. It's Sam Jackson. Do I honestly care what race Sam Jackson is? No. He's awesome either way.
Right.
And so, to take this and to try to transform this into a Lego figure with supposedly screen accurate, it was a huge debate among us, and
it kind of opened a can of worms.
It did. It really did open a can of worms. And I will say this. Lego handled it, I think, the best way they could for what they they finally made a decision, okay, we've hit a point where if we're going to do license themes, we should make it accurate to the characters. So they did make Lando brown.
Mm-hmm.
But then that following year, they immediately made everybody that was white like a pinkish peach.
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh, crap. No, I can't. See, that was the only problem. Was like, now you have two Leias. You have two slave Leias that exist.
Mm-hmm.
You have one that's pink peach and one that's yellow. You cannot interchange the heads. Otherwise, it looks weird.
Right. But thankfully for the majority of their sets, it's still the basic yellow, right?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, obviously there are exceptions, like the orcs are green.
Yes, but I mean that makes sense. They're orcs. They should not be yellow. They should be green. And I will say this. That was probably the first time I've seen Lego do their own themes that branched away from the yellow, but it made sense.
Right. And of course they had the undead.
The undead, but they're skeletons anyway. So, but they did at least do some interesting. They had both black and white skeletons, so it was kind of neat to see that. So I guess one would be like the charred skeleton, if you wanted it to be.
I guess.
I mean, they were cool either way, so I'm not going to knock them too much. And, it's been enough years where I've accepted the license themes being the color they are. I was kind of unhappy with the way they took Batman because they didn't have to make Batman pale peach. They could have made him yellow because there aren't any ethnicities in Batman. Obviously, Joker has a white face, but that's the character, no matter what race he is.
Well, there'd be Lucius Fox if they ever made a figurine of him, but they didn't.
Yeah, true, but... I mean, either way, besides, I mean, really, it's the cape and the mask and everything that makes Batman, not the ethnicity. So they could. I was a bit upset with that, but I've made my peace with it, and it's like now it's so far along that they've done it where you accept it and you actually almost expect it to happen. So, well, there's some backlash, and I do wish they hadn't gone that route. it is what it is.
I mean, for the most part, I think if it's just for like the license stuff, like if they're basing it off a movie,
right.
I think for that it does make sense.
And that was kind of their legitimacy and why they did it, because they also did. I forgot to talk about this. They had a Lego sports lineup, late '90s, where they had Lego soccer, and they also had Lego basketball, and I believe they also had Lego hockey. And I didn't get it. Well, I take that back. I did get a Lego soccer bus. Because it was a bus and it had windows and it came with a bunch of guys.
I know they had like springs and legs to kick the soccer ball.
Yes. I know that the way the soccer field was done was that you had spring-loaded or activated, however you want to say it, little stands for the guys so that the stand would actually kick the ball.
Gotcha.
Or at least maybe like with the position of the leg it would kick it. But certainly for the Lego basketball players, they had a whole new design actually for the arms. Mm-hmm. Their arms were designed so that they could hold the ball, and their arms were spring-loaded so they could shoot the ball.
Yeah.
Which was kind of neat. But for that lineup, they did do officially licensed NBA players.
Okay.
So, like, you had a little Lego Shaq. Which makes sense for him to be brown/black because he's clearly a African, black person. So, it makes sense. Okay, they've said, okay, well, we've already done this for our NBA stuff. We should really do this for the licensed material. So, to kind of cover ourselves and make everybody happy, we're going to do that. We're just going to do it for licensed themes. For everything else we've done, it'll just be straight yellow. So, like I've said, it's been enough time where I've accepted it. Do I like it? No, but it is what it is.
I'm indifferent.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you one more question before we wrap things up.
All right.
Do you think, and this is going on a very what-if realm of imagination and possibility, and this can be either with CG, stop motion, or whatever have you.
Okay.
Could they make? I know they've done like made for home release mini shorts for Bionicle, but do you think they could make something that's like Lego made, like maybe a night set or one of their original concepts, a full length Lego movie? Either like I said, either CG with just the Lego guys, like they kind of do with the games, like that style. Yeah. Or stop motion.
I think it's definitely possible. They'd definitely go CG route because they've actually done that online considerably. Actually, in their newest lineup, the Atlanta sets, they actually did a half-hour movie that they actually showed on Cartoon Network not too long ago.
Okay.
So it's
So the idea of most of these are for like on TV only or home release. Do you think they could make one that could be on
full length, like hour and a half sort of deal? I think it's possible. Whether or not they go through with it, we have yet to see.
Because they definitely have enough concepts.
Yes, and certainly they would want to do their own theme. Because one of the things about when they come up with a new theme is they do really put in a lot of in-depth material as far as storyline and that sort of thing. For instance, Space Police. They did it back in early 90s, but it was just straight up cops sort of deal. Like it was still in line with their usual space stuff. They just put Space Police on the title, and they had like a little lockup, and they had just random people. But now they've taken it to a more interesting level where you have
looks space aliens.
Yeah, like certain aliens are different criminals. Like they have
like wanted posters. What's
that one? Like Brick Daddy. He's got a purple suit and a purple fedora, and he's called Brick Daddy.
Oh, I love Brick Daddy already.
And he's got a tricked out space limo.
That's great.
And they have like this one character. They have they're really neat because they're made to look like obvious real life vehicles, but spacified.
Gotcha.
Like the police car is spacified. It looks like a police car, but and that's the great thing about Lego. They do such a great job with taking already kind of known concepts, but making it new and fresh. Obviously, with the castle lineup, like we talked about the humans, orcs, and undead, they did such a great job of just reinvigorating that.
Yes.
Because of what they had done in the early 2000s, it really trailed off, and it wasn't as good as it could have been. And so when they came up with that, it was a great mix of old concepts, but with newer parts and the new concept of, okay, we're going to give people a lot more detail. And that's why it's such a great time to be a Lego fan, because you're getting fresh new ideas that really can excite you and inspire you to build even more and your own creativity, but you're getting a good amount of parts, and you're getting a good mix of old and new.
Yeah. A lot of things. And one last thing before we sign off. I know I said that a minute ago, but I just remembered this. We briefly mentioned your game.
Oh, yes, but we didn't get to talk about it too much in depth.
And before we talk about it, I wanted to set up that we're not going to go into the specifics because it's quite a bit of detail that goes in it. So we're going to leave you an overview of Long Live the King.
Okay, the basic overview of Long Live the King is I created this game back when I was in high school. I want to say 11th grade. So I was 16. Okay, and I don't even know what possessed me to create this game, but it's a board game, and the basic idea is that I took the elements of Monopoly, chess, and Warcraft. Not World of Warcraft, I want to specify, but Warcraft, where the basic idea is third-person strategy game. Your basic idea is you collect resources, you build up a little town, you build up an army, and you fight your guys. Okay, so in designing this game, I definitely wanted that idea of collecting resources. But, the idea of chess is where you have a certain amount of men and you just move along the board and fight your guys, and the ultimate goal is to kill the king. And then Monopoly, where you have the money and you can buy things and upgrade and that sort of thing. So the basic idea is that you start off with a little start building and some footmen and some archers. And you have all your guys. You don't buy guys incorporating and all that stuff. No, you get everybody at once. And they have a certain amount of spaces they can move, a certain amount of spaces they can attack to. They have an armor defense, which is basically on how many dice they can roll. I kept the fighting very simple because I hate turn-based fighting. Because it takes too long and it's just frustrating. So basically, when you fight, you encounter a guy within your attack range. You say, I'm going to attack you. You roll your attack dice, however many it is. He rolls his attack/defense dice. If he's not in range of you, he's just on the fence. Whoever has the biggest number wins. Whoever is killed, the other person gets the money. And there's a certain amount of money for each different type of unit. And so you do this along the way. You go around, you kill guys, you get money. You can use your money to build other buildings. The neat thing about this is you have, generally speaking, you have your start building. You have a magic tower that gives you the wizard to use, and he can get spells. You have a blacksmith that upgrades your men. You have 2 towers that upgrade your archers but also can shoot back. You have a gatehouse that allows you that with the blacksmith gives you your catapult. You have your stables, which gives you knights.
Mounted knights.
Mounted knights, yes. Sorry. And you also have your throne room, which upgrades your king. Get all these different buildings, but they actually fit together to make a castle.
Yes.
Which is one of the things about it that I love. And I had a lot of fun building this because it plays into the theme. For instance, the game that I have currently, there is new school knights, old school knights, you have undead, and you have orcs. And each one of the castles is very, very distinct. Every one of the players that you have, their armies are very distinct. And I don't know of anybody that hasn't had fun playing the game.
There's also mercenaries that you can buy.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry, but forget about the mercenaries. Like the ninja.
Yes, the ninja.
Which cannot be attacked unless he attacks.
Because, ninjas can't be seen.
Yes.
Because otherwise they're a bad ninja.
Yes. Which is always good. And the pirate, the forestman/Robin Hood guy, and the berserker.
Right. Each one, they're mercenaries because each one has a special ability that you can use. So there's a lot of tactics involved, which is...
But they're mercenaries in the main sense that anybody can buy them at any point in the game, and even if they're killed, they'll go back into, say, a purgatory, and they can be rebought at any point.
Yes. And they can be the thing that can turn the tide on a game.
Yes.
Or for sometimes win the game for you.
Yes. Just depending on how it plays out. And, it's been through some incarnations because...
It was a work in progress.
It was a work in progress. While I designed the game in high school, I did not have a full enough version to actually play until about 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to... No, I take it back 3 years ago. Because I had to collect enough parts to actually build enough materials for the game for enough to 2 to 3 players. And then I finally was able to build enough for 4 players. And it is interesting to see the different gameplay between 2, 3, and 4 players.
Mm-hmm.
We also had some interesting about trying to make the archers usable and worthwhile.
The rules had to be ironed out. But at its current form, it is, I think, the most playable it's ever been. It is fun.
Oh, yes.
And as of this recording, Matt has yet to win.
Thank you for reminding me of that.
His own game. But I have a feeling This year,
Well,
2011. I think it'll be a year
The
for him
fact
to
that
win.
the last time we played, we didn't play long enough for nobody won. We just stopped playing because it was time for people to go home because it was getting late. But hopefully, the next time we play, we will actually play long enough for somebody to win, and hopefully I'll actually win.
Yes, hopefully it'll be you.
And hopefully I'll actually have the time to sit down and write out the rules so that I can look into getting a patent for it.
Mm-hmm.
Since your mom keeps hounding me about that.
Yes, and so, Long Live the King, copyright Matthew Puetz.
Yes.
2011.
Not Long Live the Kim, Long Live the King.
Long Live the King, copyright 2011 Matthew Puetz.
Yes.
You heard it here on the Freakacast.
On the Freakacast.
And I do believe that's it, unless you have anything else to add.
I'm sure I could come up with something, but I think we've covered pretty much all the main things. Certainly established how much I enjoy LEGO, how much I love not just the product, but the company for what it's given me. And I hope it continues to inspire me, as well as other people, to do many things. I think one thing that it certainly allows you to do is have a creative outlet. Find something, in my case, is therapeutic. But, hopefully it inspires other people to, say, go into engineering or architecture or those other fields that are sometimes looked upon as only, having a certain affinity for, that they don't realize, hey, if you start with Legos and you really enjoy that and you enjoy the building process, that there are outlets for that in the real world. Mm-hmm. Or work for Lego and actually get to build one of the, design the sets.
Maybe one day.
Maybe. But right now I just have to settle for buying their product.
Right. So, before we sign off,
I do want to make a mention, because this is a LEGO podcast. There are some things about LEGO that kind of most people take for granted they don't think about this, but really should be done. Anytime you write the term LEGO, it should be in all caps. Also, LEGO is not the generic term for its bricks. It is the company's name.
yes.
And as such, anytime you use it as part of a noun, it should never appear on its own. They really should not be called Legos. They are Lego bricks, Lego set, Lego products, Lego group, that sort of thing. So that's just to kind of give them a little credibility, and I think they deserve to have that.
Oh, you know what they had once? Lego Eggos.
Oh, yes, and I did not buy those for whatever
What kind of a Lego fan are you?
I know. I should be shunned, but they're literally Lego Eggos, and it's funny because, growing up with Lego, especially since by the time the term Lego My Eggo it came out, and I had already heard and knew of that the term meant play well, I'm thinking, wait, you want me to play well with my Eggo?
You know what I remember from growing up? Their campaign ad for Lego Mania. I always remember that. Lego Mania!
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't know of anybody that remembers that other than you.
Weird.
I know. And me, of course, because I remember.
I guess because that was when I was most active in playing with them, I guess.
Yeah.
Around that time. I don't know. Anyway, what else did you want to do before I distracted you with Eggos?
I'm hungry. We should eat. Anyway, the content of this podcast is copyrighted to Andrew Felson, Matthew Puetz. Freakazoid, Batman, Harry Potter, Spider-Man, and of course Lego, and all other characters are properties of their respective owners. A full list of music will be provided on the website. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Copyright 2011. Remember to wash, rinse, and refreak.
Freaks out!
Freaks in!